Chapter 8:12. After listening to Gu Mingming's narration, Elvis's face did not show any signs of emotion. Even his heart was calm. His desire for familial love had long been extinguished in those 3 huge pits. Now that he suddenly had a mother who was willing to endure such humiliation for him, the only thought in his heart was, actually, there was really no need for that. Slightly heaving a sigh of relief, Elvis gently took the cup of water from Leah and fed Gu Mingming some water. Seeing that her lips had moistened a little, his brows relaxed and he smiled softly. "Xiaoming, what do you want me to do?" Elvis asked softly. Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment. She shook her head and placed her finger on Elvis's chest. She said softly, "I want you to follow your heart. Whatever your heart desires, just do." Elvis held Gu Mingming's little hand and pressed it down gently. Her soft palm was placed on the outside of the second rib on his left side. A low and hoarse voice came out of his mouth and landed directly on Gu Mingming's chest. "Other than you, there is nothing else in this position." Gu Mingming blushed slightly. She stared straight into Elvis's eyes, as if she was about to be sucked into them. "To be honest, I don't care about what happens to them. I don't think they need my forgiveness. But, if it can make you feel better by forgiving them, then I will forgive them." Gu Mingming lowered her head. She could not tell what was going on in her heart. Subconsciously, she still hoped that Elvis could forgive his parents. Because then he could truly break free from his childhood nightmare. But if this forgiveness was based on her feelings, was there any meaning to it? Sighing, Gu Mingming looked up and said, "Let's not talk about whether I forgive them or not. The most important thing now is not to let Natalie die just like that. All right, let's think of a way to save her." Elvis had always been indulgent towards Gu Mingming. He would accompany her to do whatever she wanted to do, even if it was through a mountain of daggers or a sea of flames. Gu Mingming did not say anything more. She just obediently leaned against Elvis's chest and refused to leave. Elvis allowed her to rely on him. But since they wanted to save Natalie, they could not leave this place for the time being. Exchanging a look with Leah, they didn't say anything and just stood up and walked back in unison. Elvis was once a member of this group of stray beasts, and this base was an old one for the stray beasts. It had not been moved for decades, and no regular tribe dared to provoke them, so the original caves were basically preserved. However, the cave that Elvis used to live in had already changed owners a few times. Now, there was only a second-level jackal living inside. It looked sinister and wretched, but it was a sensible one. Seeing that it could not afford to offend the person, it tucked its tail between its legs and vacated the place. Elvis and Leah dug the cave deeper and more spacious. After all, they were going to stay here for a while and they did not want Gu Mingming to suffer. Gu Mingming sat on a tree branch outside the cave and watched her 2 men perspire profusely. She felt a strange softness in her heart. They had all experienced so many cruel things, but they had grown into the warmest appearance. This in itself should be something worth celebrating. Chapter 8:13. Gu Mingming blushed and glared at Ian. "You are the one in heat. Your whole family is in heat." Ian snorted. "I am the only one in my family." Gu Mingming was rendered speechless. She bit her lower lip and scrunched up her nose, making a threatening expression. Ian rolled his eyes in disdain. He leaned to the side in a sickly manner. "You also know that the fox in your family will secrete a high concentration of fox seductive fragrance once it mates. The last time you guys got excited, the entire Saint Nazir was boiling for 3 days. If you guys continue to be affectionate here, Wabi and I will have to slaughter the entire stray beast horde to protect you guys. I did some calculations when I was patrolling. There are a few hundred of them here. It will take a while to chop them down like carrots. It will be very tiring. Do me a favor and have some integrity when you are abusing dogs, all right?" Gu Mingming blushed furiously at Ian's words. She spat at him. "I told you I am not in heat." Ian snorted disdainfully and said, "Look at yourself. The way you look at your 2 males? Their eyeballs are about to fall out. Also, you are drooling so much that there are puddles under the tree. Do you see that? Isn't this called in heat?" Gu Mengmeng instinctively touched her chin. There was no drool at all. You are just a cheap mouth. Be careful that no females will want you in the future. Ian shrugged. Anyway, there are already people in the Eagle Owl tribe who have made it. As long as I can produce cubs and not exterminate the tribe, I will have not let down my ancestors. Gu Mengmeng gave Ian a fake smile. If your ancestors knew that you are so unmotivated, they would probably crawl out of their graves and strangle you to death. Ian did not comment. Anyway, you just have to control yourself. Got it. So annoying. Gu Mengmeng turned her head and ignored Ian. Elvis and Leah were not weak. It was as easy as cutting tofu for them to dig a cave. Anyway, they were not going to stay there for long, so it did not need to be especially big. They just did not want Gu Mengmeng to suffer, so they took care of the details. In one afternoon, the cave had been completely renovated. There were no traces or smells of anyone else staying here before Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng inside. The sky was already dark and Gu Mengmeng was extremely sleepy. She only ate some roasted meat perfunctorily for dinner before falling into a deep sleep in Elvis's arms. The next morning, Peter rushed anxiously to where Gu Mengmeng and the rest were staying. Wabi-Ai was blocking them from the outside. Peter was not Wabi-Ai's match even in his peak condition, not to mention now that he was crippled. Moreover, he was here to ask for help, so he naturally did not dare to barge in. When Gu Mengmeng finally woke up and walked out of the cave while stretching, he shouted, "Great messenger, please save Natalie." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for a moment before she walked up to Peter. The panic in his eyes was not feigned. It seemed like Natalie's condition was really not good. Gu Mengmeng looked down and said, "I can't help you if you don't tell me the truth." Peter gritted his teeth and stomped his feet, as if he had made up his mind. I'll tell you everything." Gu Mengmeng didn't reply and just looked at Peter quietly. Chapter 8:14. Gu Mengmeng didn't look surprised at all. Instead, it was Elvis and Leah who looked rather startled. You guessed it? Elvis knew that Peter was outside. How could he let Gu Mengmeng meet him alone? So within 2 seconds of Gu Mengmeng leaving the cave, he was already following behind her. Seeing her expression, he knew that she already had a good idea. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said things like, "I can't help you if you don't tell the truth," to Peter. He knew that this little fellow had long hardened her heart to save Natalie. So even if Peter didn't say anything, Gu Mengmeng wouldn't just stand by and watch. Gu Mengmeng nodded and didn't deny it. She directly answered, when the monsoon season was about to end, the stray beasts and Natalie went on a hunger strike. It's not hard to guess when you put it all together. Leah lazily rested an arm on Elvis's face, looking as if he was still in a daze. His long and narrow eyes were filled with the sleepiness of the morning. His slightly hoarse voice landed beside Gu Mengmeng's ears. Let me think. You mean that when we were attacked by stray beasts on the way back from Sauter to St. Nazaire, it was Cole who transferred people from here? Gu Mengmeng's face turned red. It sounded like a question, but Leah had used a declarative tone to reveal the truth. Without waiting for Gu Mengmeng's reply, Leah hooked Gu Mengmeng's face and kissed her gently on the tip of her brows. His low, hoarse voice was filled with joy and affection. In my opinion, you are the real little fox. You managed to guess it with just a few clues. Leah and Gu Mengmeng's conversation was like Tai Chi, but Elvis and Peter weren't fools. If they still didn't understand what was going on, they could forget about being leaders for so many years. Peter frowned deeply. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness and determination as he said, "Do you mean that Cole was the one who turned Natalie into this?" Gu Mengmeng sighed and said, "Yes and no." Peter glared at Gu Mengmeng, unhappy with her attitude. Elvis stepped forward and stood between Peter and Gu Mengmeng. His murderous aura permeated the air. Control your expression. Otherwise, your female will be the one to suffer. At the mention of Natalie, it was as if someone had grabbed Peter's Achilles heel. His arrogance was obviously deflated. If it had been someone else, he would have laughed coldly and retorted sarcastically, returning the same words to the other party. Threatening people was a skill that stray beasts did not need to learn to master. Unfortunately, the other party was a female who could crush him to death with one hand and he had a favor to ask of her. Looking away, Peter said coldly, "That is your mother beast." Elvis chuckled. "I don't care." You. Peter was furious, not because he was under someone else's control, but because his heart ached for Elvis. Natalie had sacrificed so much for Elvis, but Elvis had no intention of cherishing her. Elvis lifted his head and looked condescendingly at Peter. "It's not a wise decision to provoke someone you can't afford to offend. Peter, have you really gone senile?" Peter clenched his fists. He didn't continue arguing with Elvis. He heaved a long sigh of relief. "Great messenger, please tell me, did Natalie become like this because of Cole?" Chapter 8:15. Gu Mengmeng didn't give Peter a chance to retort. She just said, "If I'm not wrong, when he brought the stray beasts back alive, he also brought Natalie a piece of news. Elvis is now a 5th-level orc and his companions are all very powerful. His partner is the messenger of the beast deity and has inherited all the powers of the mighty beast king from the Snake King Valley. Everyone who was severely injured by his aura is the best proof. Cole is really making the best use of every step he takes. He must squeeze out every last bit of value." Peter wasn't as wise and far-sighted as Leah, nor was he like Gu Mengmeng, a transmigrator who had watched many television dramas and learned theories. But as long as it concerned Natalie, there was nothing he couldn't understand. After all, his entire life had been spent on researching that one person. Natalie hadn't made a fuss all these years. She was as quiet as a soulless doll. She clearly didn't care about anything, but insisted on living on. She wanted Peter to keep his promise to her and not hurt her only remaining son. But Cole had come to tell her that her son was now so powerful and had a partner like Gu Mengmeng. Peter was no longer a threat to him. Peter could no longer hurt Elvis. This was as good as indirectly telling Natalie that she could die now. There was no longer any meaning for her to grit her teeth and live on. Peter clenched his fists tightly. His expression was twisted and malevolent. If Cole was standing in front of him now, even if they were both 5th-level orcs, he would definitely take Cole down with him. No wonder Natalie, who had no interest in anything, suddenly said that she wanted to go out for a walk. He had foolishly thought that Cole had really convinced her and made her accept him. So it turned out that she had only gone over to confirm if Cole's words were true. So it turned out that she was just abandoning him again. The only difference was that this time, she was even more ruthless than the previous time. She wanted to end her own life to abandon him. But even so, he still couldn't bear to. "You have a way to save her, right?" Peter asked Gu Mengmeng. Although it was a question, he was very sure of it. Since Gu Mengmeng had already guessed everything, there was only one reason for her to force him to reveal Cole's identity. She could save Natalie, but he had to pay a price. And what she told Cole was just to force him to show his sincerity. "Any condition, any price, as long as you can save Natalie, I'll agree." "Including letting her leave you?" Gu Mengmeng asked nonchalantly. Peter clenched his fists so tightly that he almost crushed his bones. Gritting his teeth, his eyes were bloodshot as if he had been stabbed by a sharp knife. He squeezed out word by word from between his teeth. "If this is the only way for her to get better, I am willing to let her go." Chapter 8:16. Peter's tightly clenched fists relaxed slightly. He smiled bitterly. "Anyway, she has already hated me for so many years. There are so many things to hate that I can't even count them all. It doesn't matter if there's one more." Gu Mengmeng nodded. It's good that you have this awareness." Peter hesitated for a moment before asking, "What do you want to do? Will she be in danger? How upset will she be this time?" Gu Mengmeng tapped her chin lightly, as if deliberating how to reply to Peter. She thought for a moment before smiling. She probably won't be upset. At most, she will be so angry that she wants to strangle you. Peter was taken aback at first, before he smiled. "If I am the only one injured, you can go ahead and do it without any qualms. As long as the effects are good enough, it's not a problem for me to be injured." Gu Mengmeng believed Peter's words. She knew better than anyone else how blindly loyal the males in the beast world could be in the face of love, right? Gu Mingming said, "Let me warn you first. I plan to throw a bucket of dirty water at you." Peter nodded and stood still. "Come on." Gu Mingming's face froze. She looked awkwardly at Peter, who looked like he was waiting for the dirty water to be thrown at him. She sighed to herself. Communication was really a problem. Taking a deep breath, Gu Mingming adjusted her expression and said, "Elvis and I have 4 sons. One of them was drugged by coal and was in a coma for a long time. He only woke up recently. But even though he regained consciousness, he is still under the control of the drug. Without Cole's antidote, he cannot return to my side. So, this matter, I plan to put the blame on you." Peter's face was blank. He was not sensitive to anything other than Natalie. What did Natalie have to do with Elvis's son being drugged and controlled by Cole? Gu Mingming looked at his confused face. She knew that this man's emotional quotient was really low. He couldn't even see through such a simple matter. Sighing, Gu Mingming adopted the attitude of, "Don't be so serious with a fool. You just have to remember that you had a part in this. When Natalie looks for you, you just have to act as yourself and stick to your character settings. Understand?" Peter nodded in confusion. As long as Natalie could live, he was willing to do anything. However, didn't they say that they were going to slander him? Not splashing again? Sigh. Although Elvis was his son and was outstanding in all aspects, his taste in females was really poor. Why did he end up picking a weird one after so many choices? This was definitely not because of him, but most likely because of Natalie. After all, Natalie's only shortcoming was her poor taste in choosing partners. Otherwise, why would she look down on him but care so much about those good-for-nothings? Gu Mingming didn't care about what Peter thought and just followed Elvis and Leah back to the cave. After a simple breakfast, she let Elvis carry her to Natalie's cave. Elvis had promised to cooperate with Gu Mingming to save Natalie, so he would not go back on his word. So no matter what she said, he would cooperate. When the two of them entered the cave, Natalie was still lying quietly like yesterday, as if she hadn't even turned over once. Upon hearing Gu Mingming's words, Natalie's eyelashes quivered, but she did not open her eyes. Chapter 8:17. Whenever she could not see him, she would dream of knowing how her son was doing. Had he grown taller? Had he eaten his fill? Would he be bullied by others? But now that he had appeared, she did not have the courage to open her eyes to look at him. How was she going to tell him that she was the cause of all his suffering? Gu Mingming turned back and gently pulled Elvis's hand over, placing it over Natalie's. Elvis was very resistant. It was not that he could not forgive Natalie, but he did not like females other than Gu Mingming touching his body. Especially when Gu Mingming personally placed his hand over another female's hand. This made Elvis very unhappy. His brows were tightly furrowed and his eyes looked as if they were about to burst into flames. When Nina had hugged Lee's waist, Gu Mingming had almost gone crazy and wanted to kill him. His hand could be touched by anyone? Every time Leah said, "My Gu Mingming does not like anyone touching me," it pierced Elvis's heart. He thought she had a serious obsession with her own males, so he was as strict with himself as Leah. Other than during battles, he did not allow anyone else to touch him. But it turned out that he had been thinking too much. Xiao Ming only cared about Leah. Elvis's heart was already overflowing with jealousy, but Gu Mingming was completely oblivious. She really could not be blamed for this. The person lying in front of her was Elvis's biological mother. Natalie actually, "I have a favor to ask of you." Gu Mingming's tone was slow and it sounded like she was in a difficult position. It was not a small matter for the messenger of the beast deity to use the word favor. So the moment Gu Mingming said those words, Natalie's heart trembled violently. Although she did not open her eyes, her furrowed brows indicated that she was listening very seriously. "Actually, we are here to look for Peter." Gu Mingming could feel Natalie's hands turning cold and trembling the moment she heard that name. She could not bear to do it, but what else could she do? Qi is a child of mine and Elvis's. He was drugged by a stray beast and is now being held hostage. His whereabouts are unknown and we do not know if he is dead or alive. Gu Mingming did not explain further, but Natalie slowly opened her eyes. The moment her eyelids fluttered open, tears fell from her lashes. That gaze accurately landed on Elvis's face, filled with guilt and despair. With a hoarse and thick nasal voice, as weak as gossamer, he only said one sentence, "Get Peter here, I want to see him." Gu Mingming knew that she did not need to say anything else. Natalie had already imagined a scene where a grandfather kidnapped his grandson and tortured him in every possible way. Even if she had to come up with something, she would never be able to come up with a more brutal scene than the one in her mind. Nodding, Gu Mingming led Elvis out of Natalie's cave. The moment Elvis retracted his hand, he strode away. For the first time in history, he left Gu Mingming behind him and walked off without even turning back. Gu Mingming thought that Elvis was unwilling to forgive Natalie, so although he had come reluctantly, he still felt very uncomfortable, but she did not think that he was jealous. Chapter 8:18. How should she put it? In Gu Mingming's eyes, Peter was a ruthless and ambitious character. He did not care about right or wrong, life or death, others or himself. Other than Natalie, he did not care about anything else. But such a person was now wearing the flustered expression of a young lad experiencing his first awakening of love. It was as if he was holding a love letter and was about to confess to the person he liked for the first time. Just how much love did he have for someone who tortured his own son to death without batting an eyelid to reveal such an expression? Gu Mingming couldn't help smiling. It seemed like that weak female in the cave who could be blown away by a gust of wind was much more powerful than this murderous male in front of her. Gu Mingming and Peter did not acknowledge each other and just brushed past each other. The moment they exited the cave, Leah hugged Gu Mingming's waist. He used his chin to point at Elvis, who was standing with his back facing them. "What did you do to him? Why do you look like you've seen through the mortal world?" Gu Mingming tilted her head and looked at Elvis's back. She felt an inexplicable sense of pressure. She had already discussed with him about Natalie's matter before they came. Why did he not have such a huge reaction? Could it be that he could not take the blow of seeing his own mother? "I'll go take a look." Gu Mingming broke free from Lee's arms and walked behind Elvis. Elvis knew that Gu Mingming had come over. Even if he did not turn back to look at her, every cell in his body was involuntarily monitoring her every move. He knew it the moment she came out of the cave. "Elvis!" Gu Mingming tugged at Elvis's arm gently. Elvis turned his head to the other side, his rejection obvious. Gu Mingming was taken aback. He did not look like he was upset over Natalie's matter. Instead, he looked like he was angry at her. But she did not know what she had done wrong, but Gu Mingming felt inexplicably guilty. Because Elvis had never been angry at her. No matter how many unreasonable things she had done, he had always indulged her. What was wrong with him today? Gu Mingming was at a loss. She tugged at Elvis's arm and shook it. She called out sweetly, "Hubby." Elvis remained unmoved. He turned his head to the other side and even started to withdraw his hand from Gu Mingming's grasp. Was he really angry? Gu Mingming finally experienced the helplessness Elvis felt every time he saw her angry. He would say sincerely, "Xiao Meng, I was wrong. Although I don't know what I did wrong, but it must be my fault that you are so angry. Tell me where I did wrong, I will definitely change." That was probably what she was feeling right now. Pursing her lips, Gu Mingming looked up at the back of Elvis's head and sniffled. "If you dare to shake me off, I will cry." Elvis suddenly turned around and met Gu Mingming's misty eyes. The panic rising in his blue pupils could not be described with words. If there was anything in this world that could easily control Elvis, it would be Gu Mingming. No matter how angry he was, he couldn't bear to see her cry. He reached out a hand to touch her little face to comfort her, but his hand froze in midair. This hand had just been touched by another female. It was too dirty. Chapter 8:19. Then are you still angry? Gu Mingming pouted, with a look that said, "If you say an answer I don't want to hear, I will cry for you." Facing Gu Mingming, Elvis was always the one who surrendered first. Sighing, a trace of loneliness and melancholy appeared in his eyes. He forced a smile, but there was only bitterness at the corner of his lips. With a low voice, he said, "I'm not angry." Gu Mingming's heart skipped a beat. Although Elvis said he was not angry, why did she feel that it was worse for him to lose his temper and roar at her? Gu Mingming now felt that she might have been spoiled by Elvis and Leah. She was always flattered until she developed masochistic tendencies. Letting go of Elvis's arm, Gu Mingming threw herself into Elvis's arms. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's waist tightly and rested her chin on Elvis's chest. Looking up at Elvis, her eyes were watery and her long eyelashes fluttered, making one's heart ache for her. Even if she did not say anything, Elvis had already lost all his armor and was utterly defeated. Raising his clean hand to rub Gu Mingming's little head, he hesitated but still kissed her brow. "It's my fault for not being able to make you like me. I don't blame you." Gu Mingming was taken aback. She asked in a low, muffled voice, "Who said you don't make me like you? You are my hubby, why wouldn't I like you? Have you forgotten? I said before I love you." Elvis chuckled. "You are still willing to lie to me. At least it proves that you still care about me, right?" "I didn't lie to you." Gu Mingming was a little anxious. Why did he suddenly say that she did not love him? Elvis just smiled. His gaze was deep, as if he was facing an abyss. Gu Mingming tiptoed and could barely reach Elvis's chin. She kissed him and said in a sweet voice, "Hubby, what's wrong with you? You are making me flustered. I feel like you are going to abandon me." Elvis moved the hand that Natalie had touched behind his back and wrapped his other arm around her waist, afraid that she would make a mistake when she jumped around. This was a completely habitual action that even he himself did not realize. No matter how dejected or sad he would still subconsciously protect her. Elvis had always pulled her into his arms the moment he saw her. Today, she had already taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms, but he still had one hand behind his back. This had never happened before. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and took a step back. Her eyes were red as she glared at Elvis and said, "If you are in a bad mood because you are reminiscing about your childhood, I can coax you and accompany you. It doesn't matter. But if you really want to abandon me..." "Silly girl, why would I abandon you?" Elvis's heart ached when he saw that she was really about to cry. "Then why don't you hug me?" Gu Mingming insisted. Elvis stretched out the hand that was behind his back. With a faint gaze, he spat out, "Dirty?" Gu Mingming was taken aback. She stared fixedly at Elvis's long and slender hand with distinct joints. She looked up in confusion and asked, "It's clearly clean, how is it dirty?" "It was touched by others." "Isn't it dirty?" Elvis stared straight at Gu Mingming with some sadness and disappointment. "Or, are you only concerned about whether Leah is clean and as for me? I don't care?" His blue eyes were filled with an urgent desire, as if he was saying, "I beg you, lie to me one more time. Deny it, quickly deny it." Aside from the topic, that, my son is in a bad mood today. I need to coax him. So, that was the end of today's update. Chapter 8:20. Gu Mingming stared blankly at Elvis's hand, then at his eyes, then at his hand, then at his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, she probed, "So, you are throwing a tantrum because I let Natalie touch you just now?" Elvis was unwilling to admit it, so he retracted his gaze and looked elsewhere. Gu Mingming burst out laughing, the tears in her eyes evaporating instantly. She wrapped her arms around Elvis's waist fearlessly and said, "So you are jealous? Are you dumb? Natalie is your mother beast, her love for you is the purest and cleanest. How can you say that you are dirty after being touched by her?" Elvis frowned, clearly not buying Gu Mingming's explanation. Now that Gu Mingming knew the crux of the problem, she was no longer sullen. She climbed onto Elvis's body with both her hands and legs. Although he did not take the initiative to hug her, he did not have any intention of avoiding her. He even subconsciously used his hand to support her, afraid that she would not be able to climb steadily and fall. Gu Mingming hung onto Elvis's body like a monkey, kissing his lips over and over again. She said, "Do you have a conscience to say that I don't care about you?" I almost killed Ellie when he hooked onto your beast skin dress the other time. Have you forgotten? Elvis's heart skipped a beat. He recalled the first time he met Ellie, when Ellie intentionally said ambiguous words to make Gu Mengmeng misunderstand him, but Gu Mengmeng used her actions to slap Ellie in the face. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Who said that his Xiao Meng had never been jealous because of him? She also minded others touching him. Gu Mengmeng said softly, "My hands are sore, are you really not going to hug me? I'm going to fall. It will definitely hurt if I fall from such a high height." With that, Gu Mengmeng closed her eyes with a look as if she was ready to sacrifice herself for a martyr. Then, she suddenly let go and fell without any warning. But, would she fall from hanging onto Elvis's body? What a joke! Her body reacted faster than her brain. Gu Mengmeng had only let go of Elvis's neck for less than half a second when Elvis's large hand had already caught her but firmly. Gu Mengmeng smiled slyly and kissed Elvis's face. She said, "I knew you couldn't bear to drop me." Elvis did not say anything and just frowned with a bad expression. He was pleased that she was willing to coax him. But he could not risk his own safety. Gu Mengmeng cupped his face with both hands and said, "Hubby, I am actually very petty. If it weren't for the fact that Natalie really doesn't want to live anymore, and you're the only key to unlocking her will to live, I wouldn't have let her touch you even if she was your mother. Just this once, take it as me repaying my debt of gratitude. In the future, if anyone dares to extend their claws towards you, I will directly chop them off." Looking at Gu Mengmeng pretending to be fierce, Elvis's gaze softened. Even his tone unconsciously softened. "Repay a debt of gratitude?" Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "If not for Natalie giving you life, how would I have the chance to meet such a good husband? Wasn't this a huge favor? I should at least repay him a little." Elvis raised his eyebrows. "You need me to repay your kindness?" Chapter 821. For some reason, Elvis liked Gu Mengmeng when she was fooling around. His mood was the brightest when she was laughing without a care in the world. Kissing Gu Mengmeng's little mouth, he bit her lips in a slightly punitive manner. Looking at her watery eyes staring at him pitifully as if she was begging for mercy, Elvis's heart softened into a mess. In the end, he gave up and his only insistence was, "Don't ever risk yourself in the future, do you hear me?" Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes and understood that Elvis was referring to her sudden release of her hands and fake fall just now. She chuckled and wrapped her arms around Elvis's neck and kissed him, saying, "Is there any place safer than your arms in this world? I really don't believe that you would watch me fall and not catch me." She was clearly fooling around, but Elvis could not help but smile. This feeling of being completely controlled by her was really magical. Her confident look made Elvis feel as if a drop of sweet dew had dripped onto the tip of his heart, nourishing his entire body. Yeah, his entire body felt comfortable. Without saying a word, Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng and walked away. "Where are we going?" Gu Mengmeng asked. "To wash my hands." The corners of Elvis's lips were still curled upwards. His depression just now had long been swept away by this little girl's antics. There was really no hope for him, right? He was already a powerful 5th-level orc, and by right, he should have absolute confidence that he was an excellent partner that was hard to come by and no female would easily abandon him due to any considerations. But in front of this little girl, he was still so worried about his gains and losses. He suddenly understood what this little girl had said when she was at odds with him at the beginning of their mating. "I mated with you because I love you, not because you are strong." He seemed to have understood something now. No matter how strong a man was, he was just like that in front of love. He knew that he loved her, he had always known that. But now that he had clear evidence to prove that he loved her as much as he thought, he felt very happy. Carrying Gu Mengmeng to the lakeside, Elvis put her down and started to wash his hands seriously. That degree of seriousness made Gu Mengmeng feel that he was not washing his hands, but wanted to scrape off a layer of skin from her hands. This kind of washing method, considering the degree of cleanliness he felt satisfied with, at most, there would only be a pile of bones left. Gu Mengmeng squatted beside Elvis, her fair and tender hands dabbing at the water. Then, She pulled Elvis's hand over and helped him wash his hands gently and carefully. After making sure that every single detail was washed clean, Gu Mengmeng pulled his hand over and kissed it. Then, she caressed her own face and smiled sweetly at Elvis. "Alright, it's clean now. There's only my aura on this hand. Smell it." Elvis held Gu Mingming's little hand and brought the back of his hand to his nose to sniff. After confirming that it was really just her scent, he smiled in satisfaction and said, very fragrant, very sweet." Gu Mingming's eyes were filled with tears of joy. Before she could finish her sentence, Elvis pulled her into his arms. He kissed her collarbone and said, "Don't push me to others in the future, all right?" Gu Mingming nodded and said, "Don't push me to others anymore, all right?" Gu Mingming smiled. She wanted to say that was her mother and not someone else. Chapter 8:22. Gu Mingming did not argue further. If she was Elvis's only sense of security, then even though it was selfish, Gu Mingming enjoyed this unique trust. She wanted to protect and cherish this feeling. She felt that only she was different in Elvis's eyes. This made her very happy. Hugging and kissing Elvis, Gu Mingming promised, "It will never happen again. No one is allowed to touch my hubby." Gu Mingming's coquettish words softened Elvis's heart. It was already noon by the time he carried Gu Mingming back to Natalie's cave. Leah had cooked a huge pot of meat. The heat was on point and it melted in one's mouth. Although it was meat, it was not greasy and was just right for the weak Natalie. Gu Mingming was about to carry the bowl in for Natalie when she saw Peter walking out of the cave with a silly smile on his face. His gaze was so gentle that it was a little strange. The way he was covering his face was indescribable. Peter only stopped abruptly when he almost bumped into Gu Mingming. He was stunned for a moment when he looked up at Gu Mingming. Then, he awkwardly cleared his throat and turned his face to the side. Gu Mingming then saw the obvious red flush on his face. This should have been a slap? But why was he smiling so amorously? Could it be that Peter was different from others and his excitement was on his face? Did it feel good to be slapped? Although it was not appropriate to speculate about her own father-in-law, Gu Mingming really could not understand Peter's expression. Was he going to be embarrassed or smiling like he was in heat? Could he not do it at the same time? It looked so strange and wretched. Peter opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something to Gu Mingming. But after hesitating for a moment, he did not say a single word. He just walked around Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming glanced at Elvis, who shot her a "he's crazy" look. Neither of them said a word and just shrugged their shoulders. They continued walking deeper into the cave. When they entered, they saw that Natalie was already sitting up. She looked very angry. Very angry. Her originally pale face was slightly flushed due to the atmosphere. Her chest was heaving up and down violently. It was obvious that she had just quarreled, or rather, scolded someone. His eyes were misty, and it seemed that he was very angry. His fingers gripped the animal's skin tightly, as if he wanted to tear it into pieces. Looking up, he was taken aback when he saw that it was Gu Mingming. He instinctively looked at Elvis beside her and lowered his head. That one look was filled with guilt. Gu Mingming carried the food to Natalie's side and said, "This is made by my other partner. It's delicious. Do you want to try it?" Natalie didn't take the food. She pursed her lips, and her fingers were trembling. After a long silence, she said, "I'll definitely get the antidote for you. No matter what. I won't let him hurt you again. I can do it." She was obviously very afraid, but she still made a firm promise. Gu Mingming's heart warmed because she knew that before she met Elvis, he was not alone. Although she could not protect him by her side, she had never stopped caring for Elvis. Chapter 8:23. Elvis carried Gu Mingming up unhappily and stared at her hand. "Touching others in front of me? Do you think I am dead?" Gu Mingming didn't mind Elvis's overbearing way of speaking. Instead, she enjoyed it. Hubby was mighty and domineering, wasn't he? The little deer's heart was pounding wildly. Smiling sweetly, she tilted her head and looked at Elvis with adoration. Wow, my hubby is so handsome. Elvis couldn't keep his dark expression any longer. He chuckled. I am handsome and you still touch others? Gu Mengmeng blushed. Was she being teased by her hubby in front of her mother-in-law? Sneaking a glance at Natalie, she realized that Natalie was completely dumbfounded. She looked at Elvis and herself as if she had been struck by lightning. There was fear and uneasiness in her eyes, and she looked like she was about to cry. Gu Mengmeng found it very strange. Peter and Natalie seemed to have had a huge fight just now, to the point of almost hitting each other. But Natalie had stubbornly held back her tears. Now, why was she crying? Could it be that seeing Elvis flirting with her reminded her of her dead partner, so her heart ached? But that shouldn't be the case. That gaze was clearly one of fear. What was there to be afraid of? Still looking? Elvis was unhappy that someone had drawn Gu Mengmeng's gaze away from his face. Regardless of gender, it made him furious. Gu Mengmeng felt that if she didn't pacify him, Elvis might explode in anger. She didn't want Elvis to be jealous of some fake and inferior product again. So she cupped Elvis's face with both hands and kissed him. I won't look. My eyes and my heart are all yours. My sweetheart. Even though he knew that she was fooling around again, Elvis still enjoyed the sweetness in his heart. Seeing him smile, Gu Mengmeng knew that she had succeeded in pacifying him. So she struck while the iron was hot. Hubby, I want to tell you something. He knew that she must have a motive for being so unaccountably solicitous. Gu Mengmeng blinked cutely. I saw grapes on the way back. I want to eat grapes. On the way back, he did see wild grapevines on a cliff. There were bunches of grapes hanging on them. They were so purple that they were almost black. They looked delicious. But she didn't bother then. She had wanted to call Leah, Wabi and Ian to pluck some for them to eat. For now, she would use this reason to distract Elvis. Grapes. She wanted to eat, so she asked her male to find it. It was normal. But he did not say anything when he saw her on the way back, nor when he met Leah at the door. But he just had to say it now. If Elvis could not tell that she was trying to send him away on purpose, then he would be a fool. However, seeing how greedy she was, he couldn't bear to disappoint her. Even though he knew that she had ulterior motives, he still nodded his head and went to the place she had described to find the fruit called grapes that she wanted to eat. After Elvis left, Gu Mengmeng sat beside Natalie. Natalie's emotions calmed down a lot, but she looked at Gu Mengmeng cautiously, as if she was in a dilemma. Finally, she opened her mouth and said, Can you not abandon Elvis? Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. She pointed at herself and asked, Me? Abandon Elvis? Why should I abandon Elvis? Chapter 8:24. Natalie straightened her body and knelt beside Gu Mengmeng. She was hesitant and timid, but she still held onto Gu Mengmeng's little hand shakily. Her fingertips were cold and did not have any flesh at all. There was only a thin layer of skin wrapped around the bones, and it had a weight that could not be ignored. Elvis suffered a lot when he was young and never had a day of relaxation. He had to be cold and flawless, or else he had to die. This established the flaw in his character. He was not as good as other males at coaxing you with gentle words. But he treated you sincerely, he must be. Moreover, he is already a 5th-level beast. Even if you don't like him, don't abandon him on account of his strong fighting power, all right? Natalie looked up at Gu Mengmeng with a pleading expression. Tears were welling up in her eyes, as if they would fall off in clusters if Gu Mengmeng shook her head slightly. You met him for the first time today after his first month. How do you know that he loves me? Gu Mengmeng asked softly. Natalie was taken aback. She lowered her head and said, Gu Mengmeng said, You don't know, right? You only said that out of a mother's instinct to protect him and not let him get hurt. You don't care whether he loves me or not, right? Actually, Natalie could not completely deny Gu Mengmeng's words, because in her heart, she really thought that way. But this was not the whole story. Natalie was afraid that her words would not help Elvis and instead bring him trouble, so she hurriedly explained, A person's eyes will not lie. No matter how fierce his gaze looks, the gentleness behind it cannot be hidden. His eyes, from the beginning to the end, can only see you, that's all. You are already his entire world. He is just not good at expressing himself. I beg you, give him a chance. Even if you don't dote on him, just don't abandon him. Gu Mingming pulled her collar and showed Elvis's mating mark on her collarbone to Natalie. She said, Elvis is my first partner. I love him very much and will never abandon him. What's more, I didn't think he looked at me fiercely. On the contrary, I saw a heavy love in his eyes. He is a man who is willing to risk his life for me. He is worthy of me entrusting my life to him. Natalie was taken aback. She stared at Gu Mengmeng for a long time before her tears finally fell. Choking with sobs, he said, You are the messenger of the beast deity after all. You see things more clearly than me. Gu Mengmeng released her collar and hugged her legs. She pressed her face against her knees and tilted her head to look at Natalie. So it's not like you don't know anything. Natalie smiled bitterly, as if she had opened up her heart for the first time. I've been locked up here for 17 years. In these 17 years, I've seen too many females captured by stray beasts being treated. The bloody reality is laid out in front of me. If I still can't see his care and protection for me, then I'm not only stupid, but also blind. Chapter 8:25. I often think that if I had begged him to take me away when I was pregnant, my children would not have died. If I had stayed by his side obediently on the first day he caught me, without making a fuss or running away, maybe my partners would not have died. If I had not cut off a piece of my own skin so decisively after he forced me to mate with him, without even giving him a chance to explain before mating with him and turning him into a stray beast, maybe I would still be living peacefully in the tribe, with a strong and loving partner and adorable children. If I could have overcome the fear in my heart at the start and listened to his confession patiently, maybe he would not have been forced to mate with me that way. If there really is an if, all this could not have happened. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. Gu Mengmeng held onto Natalie's wrist and said, Loving you is not an excuse to hurt you. None of this is your fault. Natalie looked up, her tears trapped in her eyes. Wasn't it her fault? How could it not be her fault? Gu Mengmeng knew the struggle in Natalie's heart. This was the self-denial of one's own helplessness towards reality. Unable to change the world, you had no way to complain about the unfairness of the heavens, so you could only search for the reason internally, constantly thinking, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. It must be because I am not good enough, that's why it happened. Gu Mengmeng held onto Natalie's shoulders and looked into her eyes, saying, The past has already happened, we can't change it. There are no ifs in this world, everyone has to pay the price for the decisions they make now. It's meaningless to live in the past. You have to focus on the present and the future. Natalie's face was blank, she could not understand what Gu Mengmeng was saying, but she felt something in her heart collapse. Gu Mengmeng continued, He has the right to like you, but that was his own decision, so he should bear the consequences himself. We can't be responsible for everyone who likes us, we can only be responsible for ourselves. Gu Mengmeng held up Natalie's hand and placed it on her chest, saying, Ask your heart, do you like him now? Of course Natalie knew who Gu Mengmeng was talking about. She bit her lower lip and hesitated, but still shook her head. There are so many lives between us, how can we like it? Every day we spend together is just torture to each other. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, If you don't like him, then this will be easy. Natalie looked up at Gu Mengmeng in confusion. Gu Mengmeng continued, I'll bring you back to Saint Nazaire with me. Natalie was taken aback and instinctively avoided Gu Mengmeng's eyes. But Qishuan's antidote. Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders nonchalantly and said, It doesn't matter, I will save my own son myself. At most, I'll gather the 5 treasures and ask Cole for the antidote. I'm sure Cole won't dare to trick me. Natalie pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She didn't shake her head or nod. She seemed to be deep in thought. Gu Mengmeng did not rush her and just said, You also know that I have the power of a beast king. If you are afraid that he will come to Saint Nazaire to pester you, I can actually go out and kill him now. It's just a matter of time to catch my breath, once and for all. As Gu Mengmeng said that, She wanted to stand up, but Natalie grabbed her wrist. Aside from the topic, it's time to promote the correct values again. My babies, you must remember. Forcing girls to have sex with you for any reason is unforgivable. Don't believe him when he says he loves you. If he really loves you, he won't bear to hurt you like this. This was the only thing that could not be forgiven. Chapter 8:26. Gu Mingming looked down at Natalie without saying a word. She just looked at her quietly as if waiting for her to speak first. Natalie carefully released her hand and bit her lower lip. In a voice even softer than a mosquito's buzz, she said, "Is Elvis's beast father after all?" Gu Mingming chuckled. This shyness was really in a woman's nature. She liked him and couldn't bear to part with him. Why did she have to find so many excuses? But she didn't expose him. She just said mildly, "For Elvis's sake, I can spare his life. But for my son, Elvis will kill him personally. So, handing over the antidote to me honestly is the wisest move." Natalie nodded and promised, "I will definitely make him hand over the antidote." Definitely. Gu Mingming didn't say anything else. She turned and walked out of the cave. After taking 2 steps, she turned back and said, "Hurry up and eat the food. It won't taste good if it gets cold." Natalie nodded in response. Then she slowly picked up the bowl. Gu Mingming heaved a sigh of relief. She shook her head in exasperation and walked out of the cave. Once out of the cave, she felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. Elvis and Leah were standing at one side, facing off against Peter. The tension between them was rather strong, and they looked as if they wanted to tear each other apart. But when he saw Gu Mingming come out, he immediately retracted his murderous aura, as if nothing had happened. Gu Mingming was puzzled, but didn't probe further in front of Peter. Gu Mingming would never question her own males in front of others and embarrass them to prove how much they cared about her. Such a foolish act was not something Gu Mingming would do. In front of others, she would give Elvis and Leah enough face. No matter what doubts or dissatisfaction she had, she would wait until they reached home and there were no outsiders before asking. So, Gu Mingming walked towards Elvis and said to Peter, "She has already eaten the food I sent in. As long as she is willing to eat, her body will slowly recover." Peter couldn't hide the joy on his face. Today was the happiest day he had been in the past 6 months. He truly felt that Natalie had given up on abandoning him. She wanted to live for him. Even though she only wanted the antidote that he couldn't take out, he let her quarrel with him, listened to her vicious curses and threats, and watched her tremble in anger as she threw things at him. This embarrassing and unbearable scene actually made him feel a trace of sweetness in his heart. As long as she was willing to live well and continue to stay by his side, it would be fine. If torturing him would make her happy, then so be it. What was this little beating and scolding? As long as she didn't abandon him, it was fine. Gu Mingming hesitated for a moment before stopping. She looked at Peter and said, "I told her just now that I can bring her back to Saint Nazaire, but she rejected me." Peter was taken aback. He abruptly looked up at Gu Mingming. His eyes were in a daze, as if he couldn't react in time. Gu Mingming continued, "I also said, if she is afraid of you pestering her, I can kill you first to prevent any future troubles. But she stopped me." She didn't want him to die? This news struck Peter's heart violently, as if someone was holding a drumstick and beating it harshly on his chest. Chapter 8:27. But now, Gu Mingming had the ability and was willing to kill him for her. She was even bringing her far away to give her freedom. Why did she reject her? Just to stay behind and torture him? Or was it because after 17 years of companionship, she had also developed a little reluctance to part with him? This thought made Peter's brain feel like it had been bombed by an atomic bomb. There was only a vast expanse of white smoke in his brain, and he even forgot how to breathe. Gu Mingming had no time to watch the love and hate drama between her in-laws. She just leaned into Elvis's arms and allowed Elvis and Leah to carry her back to the cave they were temporarily staying in. This was the territory of the stray beasts. Strictly speaking, Wabi was a stray beast now. But he was a little special. In his heart, Ellie was just a tool to break through the boundaries. He had never loved or valued her at all. So from a certain perspective, Wabi-Ai was a stray beast from the start. So to Wabi-Ai, life here was not much different from that in the Snake King Valley. Besides Gu Mengmeng, no one else dared to provoke him. So he was happy to be free and rarely clung to Gu Mengmeng. He would only appear when she needed a thug. Most of the time, he would find a comfortable place to nest in and occasionally watch the stray beasts fight. When he was in a good mood, he would reward the winner, such as eating him. Ian was not as powerful as Wabi-Ai, but he could fly. Who could be his match in the sky? The two of them were quite self-sufficient and lived a carefree life. It also gave Gu Mengmeng's family of three enough private space to do some indescribable things. For example, Gu Mengmeng pulled a piece of beast's skin over to block the entrance of the cave. Then, she leaned against the bed and looked down at her two males, smiling without saying a word. Leah waved his tail and climbed to the side of Gu Mengmeng's legs seductively. He placed his hands on both sides of Gu Mengmeng's body, looking like he was sleeping on the bed. He licked the tip of his tongue lightly and asked in an ambiguous and low voice, "Is the queen going to pamper us when she smiles like this?" Gu Mengmeng watched as Leah moved in a flirtatious manner like a cat. He was clearly in human form, but he was crawling towards her on his knees. His large furry tail swayed to and fro with the rhythm of his crawling, forcefully creating the impression that he was wearing a special sexy lingerie. He used this ambiguous and suggestive tone to create a languid atmosphere. Squinting her eyes, Gu Mengmeng suppressed her heartbeat and pulled the corners of her lips. She poked Lee's brows with one finger and said, "Seems like the matter you want to hide from me this time is very serious. You even resorted to seduction, Leah did not deny it. He bit his lower lip and put on a flirtatious and seductive look. "So, you want to punish me?" "Master," the last two words were said right beside Gu Mengmeng's ear. His warm breath carried the character's immersion into her heart. Master-servant play. Again with this kind of trick. Gu Mengmeng pushed Lee's shoulders away. If she did not push him away, Gu Mengmeng's heart would jump out. This fellow always had a way to challenge her shameless limits. But Gu Mengmeng was not immune to his methods. Clearing her throat, Gu Mengmeng turned her face to the side. "You guys are not willing to say. Do you want me to ask Peter?" Chapter 8:28. Gu Mengmeng clearly knew that these two fellows were just trying to change the topic, but she still couldn't stop her heart from racing. Even her bones were melted by Elvis's last Her legs turned to jelly and she melted into Elvis's arms. Biting her lip, Gu Mengmeng said, "Stop fooling around, this is not Saint Nazir." Elvis bit Gu Mengmeng's neck, his voice filled with a husky charm as he tempted her. "It's all right, with Wabi-Ai guarding the cave entrance, no one will dare to enter." Gu Mengmeng's face was flushed red as she tried hard to maintain her composure. "Wabi-Ai will hear. It's all right, I am deaf." Wabi-Ai's voice drifted lazily through the beast's skin. Gu Mengmeng shuddered and instantly hardened her resolve to not let Elvis and Leah have their way. Hardening her heart, she pushed Elvis away. She didn't manage to steady herself, but only staggered a little before she steadied herself with the help of the wall. She reached out a hand to make a "stop" gesture, then took 2 deep breaths to calm herself down. She tore off the beast's skin hanging at the entrance and grinned at Wabi-Ai, saying, "Little shit, thank you. But I want to have a private conversation with my male now. Can you step aside for a while?" Wabi-Ai rejected being called little shit from the bottom of his heart. This would definitely hurt the pride and confidence he had held onto for over 800 years, so every time Gu Mengmeng called him that, he would choose to be deaf and pretend he couldn't hear it. Narrowing his eyes, he looked at Gu Mengmeng and said, "Go ahead, I am deaf anyway." Gu Mengmeng gritted her teeth and turned to reveal the mark on the back of her neck, before sighing, "Snake, ah snake, if you were here, he would definitely not dare to bully me like this." Wabi-Ai's temples throbbed at Gu Mengmeng's words. He felt that if he didn't leave, he would be letting Snake down. Without saying a word, Wabi-Ai shifted his body lazily and wandered away. After Wabi-Ai left, Gu Mingming released a small amount of beast pressure to scare away all the stray beasts that had been stirred up by Li's fox's seductive fragrance. She then casually threw the beast's skin in her hand and dusted her hands, turning to look at Elvis and Leah, saying, "You too, continue hiding it if you want to. I won't ask any more." Elvis and Leah exchanged glances, seemingly surprised. Unfortunately, before he could heave a sigh of relief, he heard Gu Mengmeng continue, "From today onwards, both of you will stay outside the cave. Don't talk to me and don't prepare food for me. I want to be independent and live alone." Elvis and Leah frowned in unison. Elvis took a step forward and scooped her into his arms without any explanation. He said angrily, "You promised that no matter what happens, you will never abandon me." Leah also leaned over with an aggrieved expression. His long and narrow eyes were filled with resentment. He did not say a single word, but it was as if he had said 1,000 words. Gu Mengmeng lifted her chin and pushed Elvis. With her current abilities, no one could hold her if she was unwilling. "I didn't abandon you. You're still my partners. It's just that I don't like you anymore." "Xiao Meng." Elvis's brows furrowed into a dead knot as he said angrily, "You're not allowed to not love me." Gu Mengmeng shrugged. "I love him, how can I not love him?" Out of topic. "Yeah, my daughter-in-law is going to throw a tantrum. I'm going to move a stool and some watermelons to watch the show. Does anyone want to join?" Chapter 829. But, you guys are getting more and more used to hiding things from me. The previous incident with Cole was decided by the two of you privately, saying that you were afraid that I would spoil the plan due to my impatience. Seeing that it was your first offense, I didn't hold it against you. But this time, you guys are doing the same thing again, hiding something from me even though you guys clearly have something going on. Gu Mingming's tone was very calm, as if she was just stating the facts. But this attitude made Elvis and Leah at a loss of what to do. If she threw a tantrum and threw a tantrum, they would still have 100 ways to coax her. What they were most afraid of was her not throwing a tantrum. In a relationship, lying is the beginning of a breakdown. You guys will slowly start to have secrets that I don't know, and I will become more and more paranoid. The cycle will repeat until either I break down or you guys break down. The final outcome will always be death. Since that's the case, why don't we cut our losses in time? From now on, I will learn to live independently and not rely on you guys for everything. I'll learn how to ignore your unspeakable secrets and live my own life. Xiao Meng. Elvis growled. When Gu Mengmeng hardened her heart, why would she be afraid of Elvis's expression? Not giving him a chance to interrupt, she continued, "But don't worry, just because I still love you guys now, I won't be so heartless to turn you guys into stray beasts. I will always keep the mark on my body, and you guys will still be my partners in name." Elvis held Gu Mengmeng's waist tightly once again, refusing to let go despite Gu Mengmeng pushing him. He frowned and said, "If you don't want me, you might as well kill me." Elvis looked down at Gu Mengmeng's hand that was pushing against his chest. He used a lot of strength, but with Gu Mingming's current abilities, it was not impossible for her to push him away. But to push him away, she had to use enough strength to break at least 2 of his ribs. That pair of fair little hands were hammering and pushing against his chest, but she could not bear to do so. "You obviously can't bear to leave me, right?" The corners of his lips curled up slightly, his smile carrying a hint of mischief. His blue eyes were filled with mirth as he lowered his head and kissed Gu Mingming's lips. He allowed her to bite him, allowed her to behave atrociously, but he could not stop her from escaping. The kiss lasted for a long time until Gu Mingming finally stopped throwing a tantrum or resisting. Elvis then slowly released her and used his thumb to wipe his lips. He lowered his head to look at the 2 drops of saliva on his thumb and chuckled. "You bit me for half a day, but there is not even a scratch on my skin. You still don't want to admit that your heart aches for me?" "Yeah, I just can't bear to hurt you guys, so you guys can bully me." Gu Mingming glared at them, feeling a little angry. Elvis's heart ached for her aggrieved look and he said helplessly, "How could we bear to bully you? It's just that there are some things that will upset you. We will solve them. You just have to be happy." Gu Mingming hung her head and said, "You're still unwilling to tell me even at this stage?" Elvis's heart tightened. He looked at Leah and finally surrendered. "Don't be angry, I'll tell you all right?" Gu Mingming looked up at Elvis and asked, "Do you think I'm throwing a tantrum just because I want to know about this?" Elvis was taken aback, as if he did not understand what Gu Mingming meant. Gu Mingming sighed and shook her head. "Forget it, I don't want to know anymore. You guys go out, I want to rest." Aside from the topic, most of the time, a girl throwing a tantrum was not because of the matter itself, but because of the other half's attitude. Unfortunately, most of the time, boys would never understand. Chapter 8:30. Elvis and Leah looked at each other. She was the one who made a big fuss and insisted on knowing. Now that they told her, she said she didn't want to know. Moreover, didn't they already agree to tell her? Why did she still have to chase them out? Gu Mingming looked at the two males who stood rooted to the ground. She waved her hands and said, "If you guys aren't leaving, then I'll leave. I'll sleep outside tonight." Xiao Meng. Elvis pulled her back and locked her in his arms. "Don't be angry, Leah and I will listen to you. Today, we will guard you at the entrance. Be a good girl and sleep in the cave, all right?" Gu Mingming's face turned red. Gu Mingming flung Elvis away and gestured a "please" gesture to chase them away. Elvis and Leah knew that Gu Mingming was really angry. They didn't want to make her even angrier. Hence, the two partners who were so famous in the beast world stood pitifully at the entrance of the cave. To be able to see Gu Mingming through the entrance, the two of them didn't avoid the sun. They let the afternoon sun burn their bodies as they guarded the entrance without moving an inch. Gu Mingming was really heartless. She turned her head and sprawled on the bed to take an afternoon nap. She only showed Elvis and Leah her back view. She didn't even turn her body. After a long while, the two of them who were listening carefully at the entrance knew that Gu Mingming had fallen asleep. They then sighed in disappointment and their shoulders slumped down unknowingly. "The last time you chased me out of the cave was after you returned from the beauty pageant in Sauter. You found out that I created opportunities for you during winter. And that time, you didn't stay angry for so long." Elvis looked at Gu Mingming's back view and felt a little tormented. He was already used to her nestling in his arms when she slept. The way she slept in a daze always made his heart soften. If he wasn't around, would she fall onto the ground the moment she turned over? She was used to hugging his tail when she slept. Now that her arms were empty, would she not be able to sleep well? Leah smiled bitterly and said, "Yeah, I was envious when I saw you being chased out. At least you had the right to be chased out. But I was forbidden from getting close to you and refused to interact with you. I didn't even have the chance to beg for mercy." Elvis smiled helplessly and said, "Yeah, so you got what you wanted? Does it feel good to be kicked out?" Leah smacked his lips as if savoring it seriously. Then he chuckled and said, "In the past, we didn't seem to care much about where we slept. Why are we so obsessed with the cave now? Not being able to enter makes my heart feel empty." Elvis's gaze was deep as he stared at the little person on the bed. "What we are fixated on is not the cave, but the little person throwing a tantrum in the cave." Leah nodded in agreement. "That's right. Once she gets angry, there's nothing we can do." Elvis's gaze contained a gentleness that even he himself could not detect. When his gaze lingered on Gu Mingming, it was filled with happiness. Being kicked out of the house by her was also a kind of happiness. After all, he didn't even have the chance to be expelled in the past. "So, do you really intend to tell her about this?" Lee's brows were still furrowed. That matter, he did not want Mingming to know. Elvis glanced sideways at Leah. "Do you have a better idea?" Chapter 8:31. Elvis nodded. "I can choose not to say, but I cannot lie. I promised her that I would not lie to her." Leah nodded and did not say anything else. He just turned to the side to start cooking. Elvis stood at the same spot and continued to stare at Gu Mingming silently. That petite body had such a strong attraction that nothing in this world could compare to her in his eyes. Sighing, Elvis shook his head in exasperation. Just like that, she stood at the top of the tree. When Gu Mingming stood up and stretched lazily, it was just a gentle action, but it instantly affected the emotions of the two people standing at the door. Gu Mingming, I cooked potato and meat paste. Can I bring it in for you to try? Leah leaned against the door and asked with a fawning expression. Gu Mingming ignored him as if she could not hear him. Leah was not dejected and continued as if he did not notice Gu Mingming ignoring him. Natalie's body is weak, so this is definitely suitable for her to eat. How about I accompany you to bring it over and you can eat with her there? Gu Mingming remained silent. Leah looked at Elvis. Elvis sighed and his gaze deepened. Something might have happened in Sauter. This sentence stunned Gu Mingming. She looked up into Elvis's eyes and pursed her thin lips tightly without saying a word. Elvis took a deep breath and continued. I always knew that the stray beasts had such a standard because they had the support of a mighty figure. But I only found out today that this mighty figure is Cole. Gu Mingming was stunned. The stray beast's backer was Cole? If even Elvis knew about it, it meant that it was not a recent incident? But wasn't Cole the previous leader of Sauter? The leader of the Messengers tribe was the backer of the stray beasts? Was this a plot of collusion between officials and bandits? Elvis could not bear to see Gu Mingming frown and did not want her to spend too much time pondering over Cole. Hence, he continued. The stray beasts' attacks on tribes may seem random, but it is not. They attacked tribes that were against Cole or had obstructed him in certain matters. They can be considered as Cole's secret force that helps him settle some shady matters. Gu Mingming frowned. She recalled that Cole had brought Qixin somewhere after the dry season, and that he had not appeared for such a long time. Thinking back, the last time she saw him, he seemed to have asked her if the water source was ready and said that Sauter did not lack water. But later on, Gu Mingming dug her own well and did not take Cole's words to heart. But now that he thought about it, Elvis first mentioned that something might have happened to Sauter, then he mentioned that Cole was supporting the stray beasts behind the scenes. Elvis let out a long sigh and looked at Gu Mingming with a determined gaze, as if he was telling her, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Peter said that at the beginning of the dry season, Cole came back with a little wolf cub. He felt that the little wolf cub looked similar to me, and Cole seemed to treat him very well. He even said, "I can't let my precious son lack water." After that, he brought all the stray beasts of 4th level and above away, leaving only Peter to guard the camp. Gu Mingming took a deep breath. She did not need to guess to know that the wolf pup Cole was carrying was Qixin. Sauter does not lack water. If you feel worse because you don't know, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? I won't do it again. Gu Mingming then nodded her head in satisfaction. Then, she glanced at Leah coldly at the side. Leah swayed his tail and walked to Gu Mingming's side like a little wife. He placed his arm on Elvis's shoulder and used his long and narrow eyes to act out an affectionate apology. Chapter 8:33. Gu Mingming also knew that she had made a huge fuss today. In fact, she could have used gentler methods and words to tell them what she thought, but she just couldn't control her temper at the moment. Perhaps it was because of the bloody tragedy that Natalie and Peter had kept from each other. She felt really uneasy, terrified and at a loss as to what to do. If Elvis and Leah were to keep things from her, would there come a day when these minor details would pile up into a colossal figure that would crush all the trust between them? You wouldn't understand if I didn't say it. This was the initial state of estrangement in a relationship. But now that Elvis and Leah had promised not to keep things from her again, she naturally wouldn't continue to pester them endlessly. After all, her mental age was already over 1,000 years old. There was a limit to how willful she could be. Lowering her head, Gu Mingming twisted her fingers. My tone wasn't good today. I said many harsh words. I'm sorry. Elvis and Leah each stood on one side and kissed Gu Mingming's face at the same time. The two perfectly handsome faces with completely different styles had the same doting expression on them. Elvis did not say a word while Leah held Gu Mingming's little hand and kissed it. You know very well that compared to an apology, we prefer to hear your confession. Gu Mingming's face was blushing, looking even more hazy and gentle under the moonlight. She said in a soft tone, "I will never say that I want to leave again. You guys are the most important people to me. I only took an afternoon nap and I already feel so lonely. If you guys really leave, I don't even know who I can cry to." Silly girl. Elvis tightened his grip on her waist. Looking into her apologetic eyes, he smiled. "Unless I die, I will never leave you." Gu Mingming pressed her forehead against Elvis's. "You won't leave even if I chase you away?" Elvis kissed her on the lips. Then he replied in a low voice, "You are my entire world. Where else can I go?" Gu Mingming didn't say anything else. She just smiled sweetly. Leah brought over a large bowl of potato and meat paste. "Can we eat now? Do you want it here or take it to Natalie's and have it with her?" Gu Mingming thought for a while and said, "Let's go eat with Natalie. I will bid farewell to her on the way." "You want to go to Sauter?" Elvis asked as he carried Gu Mingming towards Natalie's cave. Gu Mingming nodded and said, "I'm worried about Barit and Oakley, and Qixian is also here." Elvis stopped in his tracks and looked at her quietly. Gu Mingming tilted her head and asked, "What's wrong?" Elvis took a deep breath and wanted to suppress the discomfort in his heart, but when he thought about how he promised not to hide anything from her, he swallowed back the words "I'm fine" and ground it into a sentence in his throat. "Barit is your pursuer, he even confessed to you earlier than Leah." "You're so worried about him? Are you thinking of taking him in as our third child?" Gu Mingming was taken aback for a moment before smiling. Instead of answering, she asked, "Then I also mentioned Oakley. Are we going to accept him as the fourth in our family?" Chapter 8:34. Gu Mingming was dumbfounded by Elvis's words. "Why?" Elvis stared at Gu Mingming quietly for a long time before asking, "You like Oakley?" Gu Mingming shook her head without thinking. "I don't, but I don't like Barit either. Then why does Barit have the right to challenge me?" Elvis said, "He went up to the platform of the deity's punishment for you and offered to become your stored food without knowing that you are the messenger of the beast deity. You praised him more than once, and you even kissed him before." Gu Mingming could admit to the first few things, but what did he mean by kissing him before? Why did Gu Mingming have no impression of it at all? "When did I kiss him before?" Elvis's gaze deepened. "You did, because you kissed him, so he miraculously came back to life on the platform of the deity's punishment. Leah saw it too." Gu Mingming turned to look at Leah, only to see him nodding his head unwillingly with a conflicted expression. The way he looked at Gu Mingming was not right. Gu Mingming recalled carefully and remembered that there was indeed such a thing. At that time, Barit had fainted due to dehydration. Actually, he could have recovered by feeding him some water, but Gu Mingming tried a few times to no avail. In the end, she had no choice but to use her mouth to feed Barit water, and she only fed him one mouthful before being brought away by Elvis. Gu Mingming face-bombed, sweating. "That was not a kiss, I was just saving him. If I didn't feed him some water, he would have been captured by Leah to be skinned and made into a specimen. How scary." Leah, who had been silent all this while, said faintly, "If you don't like him, what does his life or death have to do with you?" This sour feeling, Gu Mingming did not dare to dwell on the past with these two anymore. In their eyes, as long as Gu Mingming looked at someone, that person would definitely be their love rival. Even for Cole, just because Gu Mingming mentioned his name frequently, the two of them had already imagined all sorts of love-hate plots. As a result, Gu Mingming didn't even dare to scold Cole in front of them in the later stages. "I really want to go to Sauter because I am worried, but it's not because I like Barit. It's because he, Oakley and the rest of the snow foxes are now my tribesmen and I have to be responsible for their lives. You can't ignore them when you know they're in danger." Elvis heaved a sigh of relief and did not refute Gu Mingming. He did not want to force Gu Mingming to admit that she liked males other than him and Leah, so he had been anticipating Gu Mingming's rebuttal from the start. Now that she had refuted him, he naturally would not pursue the matter any further. What should he do if she doesn't refute him? They continued walking towards Natalie's side. When they were about to reach the entrance of the cave, Elvis opened his mouth and said, "Xiao Meng, if there comes a day when you really have your eyes on a male, you must tell me in advance so that I can be mentally prepared." Just as Gu Mengmeng was about to say that she would not bring any more men into the house, Leah spoke first. "Yes, you must tell me in advance so that I can silence him before the rice is cooked." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback for a moment before she broke into a smile. She patted Lee's shoulder and said, "It's really a dangerous thing to be liked by me." Leah raised his eyebrows and asked. Chapter 8:35. Elvis and Leah both laughed. Gu Mingming's words had two meanings. Firstly, it was a promise. In the beast world, the difference in levels was absolute. Elvis was 5th level, Leah was 4th level, and unmated males were at most 3rd level. How could they talk about protecting themselves in the hands of Elvis and Leah, who had been through hundreds of battles? Their chances of escaping were not high, so how could they talk about challenging? This meant that there would not be any new members in the family. Secondly, it was a spur. She was indirectly telling them that she did not wish to see them get hurt. They had to become even stronger and protect themselves no matter what. Only then would they have the right to stand by her side and be her males. "I will always listen to Xiao Meng." Elvis kissed Gu Mingming's temple. Leah bit Gu Mingming's left ear and rubbed it intimately. "As you wish." After a while, Elvis and Leah continued to accompany Gu Mengmeng to Natalie's cave. But when they were about to reach, the three of them stopped in their tracks with a serious expression. Yes, the beast world did not have the concept of chastity, but Gu Mengmeng did. "I happened to bump into my in-laws eating fish while delivering food. It was so awkward at the cave entrance. Should I turn around and leave? Or should I turn around and leave? It's urgent, I'm waiting online." Gu Mengmeng jumped down from Elvis's arms and took 2 steps back with a blushing face. She asked Leah to divide a portion of the food into a stone bowl and let Elvis place it at the cave entrance. Elvis did as he was told with a black face. Then he carried Gu Mengmeng back to the cave where they were temporarily staying. Gu Mengmeng had slept a lot in the afternoon and was in high spirits now. She could not fall asleep no matter what, so after dinner, she dragged Elvis and Leah to discuss the rescue mission at Sauter. When she first heard the news, Gu Mengmeng wanted to rush over immediately. But after calming down, she felt that it was not appropriate to rush over now. Elvis and Leah also felt the same way. The dry season had just started and Cole had already brought his men over. No matter what he wanted to do, he would have already succeeded by now. It was not the best time for them to rush over now. Even though Gu Mengmeng was the main fighting force, with Qixin in Cole's hands, there was a limit to what she could do. And if she was not careful, she might even be threatened by Cole, causing her teammates to be tied up and be controlled by him. Besides, the stray beasts led by Peter were under Cole's orders. Without Cole's permission, Peter would never have told them this news. Leah boiled water for her to bathe. Although the small lake here was almost dried up, she had not bathed for 2 to 3 days and her body was extremely uncomfortable. Although it was not to the extent of being unbearable, how could Elvis and Leah allow her to suffer? Who cared if other people could drink it or not? All they wanted was for their female to have a comfortable bath. If anyone was dissatisfied, they could try to snatch the bath water from their hands. Chapter 8:36. I have been very careful along the way and didn't realize that anyone was following me. Carter and Melinda were in the ocean and couldn't have passed this news to Peter. Fei Rui had taken the water route back to St. Nazaire and had neither the time nor the motive to leak the news. But Peter knew that I had obtained the kiss of the ocean and knew that I would take this route back to St. Nazaire. He came at the right time, and even though he knew that he couldn't snatch anything from me with his abilities, he still came. Leah gently stirred up the hot water and the beast's skin slid across Gu Mingming's smooth shoulders. Crystal clear water droplets flowed down Gu Mingming's shoulder blades, creating a suggestive sound. Lee's gaze was focused as if he was admiring a work of art. The words that came out of his mouth also seemed to be a professional evaluation of this work of art. It was soothing but convincing. I'm afraid this was all part of Cole's plan from the start. Gu Mingming nodded and opened her mouth to catch a grape that Elvis handed over. Oh, so sweet, Gu Mingming sighed in satisfaction. Previously, she had found an excuse to send Elvis away so that she could speak to Natalie alone. She didn't expect Elvis to really pluck the grapes, and Gu Mingming was addicted to them the moment she tasted them. Although she didn't request Elvis to pluck them again, but was there a need to say such things? Elvis had such a strong desire for any joyful expression on Gu Mingming's face. He would spare no effort to do anything that could make her happy. Not to mention a few bunches of grapes, even if Gu Mingming wanted the stars in the sky, Elvis would jump on the spot and pluck them for her without a second word. Gu Mingming licked her lips and continued. I think so too. He seems to be purposely luring me back to solder. What do you mean? Elvis plucked another grape and fed it to Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming opened her mouth to receive it, and the sweet juice filled her mouth. Her teeth were filled with the sweet juice, and this sweetness directly brought her a sense of bliss. Gu Mingming narrowed her eyes in satisfaction and swallowed the grape. When the dry season started, he told me that Solder had a well and there was no shortage of water. He asked me if I wanted to go to Solder to spend the dry season there. Was this considered a bribe? I ignored him then and didn't take it to heart. Wasn't it just a well? We can just dig one ourselves. Elvis nodded with a chuckle, but did not mention that she was the only one in the entire beast world who could make digging a well sound so easy. He did not know what the well meant to the beast world. There were only 2 wells in the entire beast world, one in Solder and the other in Saint Nazir. It was the fountain of life that the messenger of the beast deity had bestowed upon the messenger's tribe. This was also one of the reasons why every tribe wanted to take possession of the messenger of the beast deity. Food in winter and water source in dry season were enough to make every tribe in the entire beast world go crazy. The item that Gu Mingming shared so easily was the treasure that the previous messenger of the beast deity used to control the beast world. Chapter 837. Is this considered coercion? Gu Mingming chuckled. Should I do as he wishes? What is his motive for making me go to Solder? Elvis placed the last grape into Gu Mingming's mouth. It should not be coercion, but a provocation. Gu Mingming raised her brows and looked at Elvis. Elvis chuckled. Do you still want to eat? Should I help you pluck more? Gu Mingming shook her head. Elvis rubbed Gu Mingming's little head. Seeing her eating contentedly made him feel better. But at the mention of coal, a cold glint flashed across Elvis's eyes. It was fleeting and not obvious. Solder is now a division of Saint Nazir. Coal brought stray beasts to invade. This is a territorial dispute and there is no room for compromise. So it is not a threat and I will not allow you to be forced. Gu Mingming nodded. She was impressed by Elvis's strong stance on the left. My hubby is so manly. This imaginary special effect had been floating around Gu Mingming like a 3D experience. Elvis enjoyed Gu Mingming's adoring gaze very much. The water temperature was no longer high enough. Elvis scooped Gu Mingming out of the stone basin and wrapped her up in a warmed beast skin. Leah moved the bathtub out to deal with it. Then, he started a fire in the cave to evaporate all the water from Gu Mingming's bath. This was to prevent her from sleeping uncomfortably at night. Elvis placed Gu Mingming on the bed and rested her head on his thighs. He used a clean beast skin to gently dry her hair. His heart softened at the sight of her flushed face from bathing. Let Leah and I handle the territorial dispute, all right? Gu Mingming nodded. Yeah, I am happy to be free. Actually, when Peter told them this piece of news, Leah immediately realized that this was Cole's entire plan. After all, Leah was all too familiar with Cole's methods. Even if he could not immediately piece together the whole picture, he still had a sharp intuition. And Elvis naturally trusted Leah. That was why the two of them were so obviously hostile towards Peter. There was no other reason. Anyone who helped Cole set up a trap for Gu Mingming was naturally an enemy. It was the same for his biological father. He did not tell Gu Mingming because he did not want her to worry. After all, during this period of time, there seemed to be nothing that could make her happy. They had clearly promised to make her happy, but why was it that after mating with them, Gu Mingming's life was filled with trouble? Elvis and Leah frowned slightly. They even suspected if it was because of their unbearable selves that they had tainted Gu Mingming's originally brilliant life. But even so, they still held onto her hand greedily, not wanting to be abandoned by her. That was why they wanted to solve these troubles in a place where she couldn't see them. But their Ming didn't like it when they hid things from her. "From now on, I won't hide anything from you." Elvis was still drying Gu Mingming's hair gently and seriously. He once again promised what he had promised in the afternoon: "I'll tell you about the matter and you'll let me handle it. It feels good to be trusted." "Xiao Meng, thank you." Gu Mingming chuckled and turned around to look at Elvis. "Silly hubby, you are my man. If I don't trust you, who else can I trust?" Digression. Babies, today's update has ended. Chapter 838. The next morning, Natalie appeared before Gu Mingming. Gu Mingming was momentarily taken aback, but it didn't last long. Natalie's complexion was already much rosier. She must have eaten regularly these few days, in addition to Peter's meticulous care. Her complexion looked much better than before. Although she was still weak, at least she didn't give off the feeling that she was about to die the next second. Natalie kept sneaking glances at Elvis from the corner of her eye, as if she wanted to speak to him. But Elvis's stay-away expression was too cold. Natalie mustered up her courage several times, but ultimately didn't dare to approach Elvis. Sighing, Natalie shifted her gaze back to Gu Mingming. "Peter promised to bring me to find the antidote for Qixuan. Although it will not be easy, I will definitely supervise him in concocting the antidote." Gu Mingming nodded. Gu Mingming tilted her head to look at Peter. An unnatural expression flashed across his face. Clearly, finding the antidote was all nonsense. He was just creating an opportunity to bring Natalie far away from this place and start anew. A world where there would be no misunderstandings or conflicts between the two of them. He just wanted to find a way to stay by Natalie's side, right? But winter is coming after the rainy season. Won't it be too dangerous for you to go out to find the antidote now? Gu Mingming was a little worried. Although Peter was a 5th-level beast and had rich battle experience, even the strongest beast was as insignificant as a grain of sand in the face of nature. How could he overcome the cold winter and the lack of food alone? It really wasn't a wise decision to go out at this time. Natalie's eyes flickered with bitterness as she said, "I know. It'll definitely be tough. But I want to quickly concoct the antidote. Only by saving Qixuan can I have the right to say sorry." Natalie's gaze landed on Elvis again. Seeing that he didn't even frown, completely ignoring her and Peter, she would be lying if she said she wasn't disappointed. But after what Elvis had gone through, it was understandable that he wouldn't forgive her. She needed a chance to make up for it. She had to do something for Elvis, so that she wouldn't be tormented by the guilt in her heart. Peter was also aware of this. That was why he allowed her to do such ridiculous things. However, even though he was by her side, and the so-called antidote was completely up to him, he naturally had a way to make her obediently follow his rhythm and satisfy her desire to make up for it within a safe and controllable range. Gu Mingming did not say anything else. After all, it was someone else's life and they had the right to decide how they wanted to live it. What she could do was to stop when it was appropriate. Otherwise, going too far would be as bad as falling short. That afternoon, Gu Mingming's group and Natalie left the stray beast camp together. They headed towards the place where Peter had rushed out to snatch the kiss of the ocean. Before they parted, Gu Mingming suddenly placed her hand on Elvis's shoulder. She frowned and turned to look at Peter. "You were the one who bit Elvis's shoulder so deeply that his bones could be seen, right?" Peter froze and instinctively turned to look at Natalie. As expected, he met a pair of angry eyes. Chapter 839. Natalie's eyes reddened and tears welled up in her eyes. Her heartache fell on Elvis's shoulder. Even though there were no teeth marks left, it was as if Natalie could see Elvis being bitten until his flesh was a bloody mess. Clenching her fists, Natalie turned and ran off. Peter glared at Gu Mingming, but she just shrugged. She will run off if I don't chase after her now. Peter shook his fist fiercely, then ran after Natalie without looking back. Gu Mengmeng crossed her arms as she watched Peter explain and Natalie throw a tantrum. Only when the two of them had completely disappeared from sight did Gu Mengmeng lean into Elvis's arms. Let's go back to Saint Nazaire. Elvis didn't say a word. He just carried Gu Mengmeng steadily towards Saint Nazaire. Leah reached out to poke Gu Mengmeng's little face. Why are you smiling like that? Gu Mengmeng had been trying to hold in her laughter. But after being exposed by Leah, she couldn't hold it in any longer. Shaking her shoulders, she laughed. I guess I am the first person in history to matchmake my own in-laws. I should be able to secure the title of a filial daughter-in-law, right? Leah raised his brows. I don't understand. Are you trying to matchmake them or break them up? Gu Mengmeng leaned against Elvis's shoulder and chuckled. In this world, there is probably no one who is more sincere to Natalie than Peter. Peter is the best candidate to ensure that Natalie receives the best care. But he bullied my hubby so much in the past. If I let him live too comfortably, I will not be happy. Elvis lowered his head and kissed Gu Mengmeng's little head. So, are you taking revenge for me? Gu Mengmeng nodded and admitted it openly. The corners of Elvis's lips curled up. His gaze was always gentle when he met her eyes. Raising his brows, he said, based on my character, this level of revenge is too gentle. But, because you are the one who did it, I feel very blessed. Yeah, just take it that I have already taken my revenge. I will not pursue the past. Actually, Gu Mengmeng didn't mean that. She did not do anything cruel to Dell, not because she expected Elvis to forgive her. After all, he had gone overboard and was too cruel in the past. In Gu Mengmeng's heart, it would not be wrong to kill Peter 100 times over. But she did not do so because she did not want to overstep her boundaries. She wanted to leave the final decision to Elvis. No matter how he wanted to take revenge, she would stand by his side unconditionally and support his decision. And the little prank she was playing now was at most creating some trouble for Peter, taking it as interest. However, if Elvis was willing to give up on revenge because of the sweetness she brought him, it would be the best scenario for her. She did not care what happened to Peter. She cared about Elvis. Forgiving Peter was actually letting Elvis off. The heart was only so big. If it was used to store hatred, then where was the love? As for Elvis, his hatred towards Dell had long faded to the point that he could no longer recall it. As a male, especially after having Gu Mengmeng, Elvis could understand Peter's craziness more and more. Chapter 840. If a word of forgiveness could make Gu Mengmeng feel at ease, then he would forgive her. Whether it was Peter, Natalie, or anyone else, as long as Gu Mengmeng wanted him to forgive her, then he would forgive her. Although he no longer cared about motherly love, if Gu Mengmeng felt that he would be happier with Natalie alive, then he would show her happiness. Anyway, he was willing to do anything that could make her happy. Moreover, how could he not be happy when he saw how concerned she was for him? The journey is very boring. Do you want to chat with the beast deity? Elvis suggested. Gu Mengmeng shook her head. I want to accompany all of you. How could Elvis not want Gu Mengmeng to accompany him? It was just that Gu Mengmeng was always in a good mood when she returned from the beast deity's place. So although he would feel very lonely when she fell asleep, he still hoped that she could be happier. Wabi-Ai looked at Gu Mengmeng with hidden bitterness. Why don't you go visit him? If you fall asleep, we will be able to travel much faster. Otherwise, if we continue like this, I will become a dried snake when we reach Saint Nazaire. Gu Mengmeng knew that Wabi-Ai was speaking the truth. But she also knew that he was just worried that Snake would be too lonely and wanted her to accompany him. But Wabi-Ai clearly didn't know that she could not communicate with Snake even if she went to the messenger of the beast deity's place. She could only look at him and her other self in the parallel universe. Looking at Wabi-Ai's increasingly dry skin and listless expression, Gu Mengmeng felt apologetic. In order to obtain the kiss of the ocean, she had dragged him along even though it was clearly not the right season. If watching a television series at the beast deity's place could make Wabi-Ai feel better, then so be it. Gu Mengmeng took a deep breath. All right, In order not to be a burden to everyone, I will go accompany my father after lunch. With that, Wabi seemed to have been possessed by Oriton and became extremely stubborn about having lunch. Under Wabi's various threats and promises, Gu Mengmeng and the rest's lunch was brought forward by at least 2 hours. When Gu Mengmeng finally finished her meal and was prepared to sleep in Elvis's arms, Wabi coughed shyly beside her ear and said, "Also ask the mighty beast deity if he can send me over too." This was the second time Wabi had mentioned this to Gu Mengmeng. It seemed like he was not being impulsive, but was really considering it. Gu Mengmeng didn't want to disappoint Wabi after giving him hope. Hence, she did not reply. She patted him on the shoulder without a word. Then, she closed her eyes in Elvis's arms. The white fog gradually gathered with the drowsiness. This feeling was very strange. She did not know how the beast deity sensed that she wanted to see him. Usually, it would not be like this when she was sleeping. But if she went to sleep with the mentality of wanting to see the beast deity, she could see him every time. To say it was a coincidence was too much of a coincidence. The message that Wang Xiaoxin left behind clearly said that the beast deity would only guide them in the dream if there was a major deviation in their course of action. Chapter 841. Gu Mengmeng smiled sweetly. "Father, I am here to ask you something on behalf of my friend." The beast deity didn't answer Gu Mengmeng's question. He just pulled her wrist and walked deeper into the white fog. "Let me show you something first." Gu Mengmeng understood that the beast deity clearly didn't want to answer Wabi's question. Otherwise, he wouldn't have interrupted her so obviously. So Gu Mengmeng didn't continue asking and just let the beast deity change the topic. Look, the beast deity was like a child presenting a treasure. He gently parted the white fog to reveal a patch of grass about 2 square meters. It was a very small area, but it looked so precious in the fog. There was a 2-seater bench on the small grassy ground. It was made of wood and looked like the kind of bench used in parks for people to rest on. However, it looked like it was made of exquisite materials and had a strong natural scent. There were 2 cushions made of vines on the back of the bench. Even though it was just a small area, Gu Mengmeng could smell the refreshing fragrance of the grass and her entire mood brightened up. The beast deity looked at Gu Mengmeng's reaction and smiled in satisfaction. "Your contributions to the beast world will be reflected here. And everything here will become your strength." Gu Mengmeng looked at the beast deity as if he was an idiot. She had no idea what he was talking about. The beast deity cleared his throat. "I told you before. Every messenger of the beast deity transmigrated to the beast world with a specific mission. Wang Xiaoxin's mission is faith, while yours is hope. At first, I thought that the manifestation of hope would be a seed that would slowly grow into a towering tree with the accumulation of energy, but I didn't expect that it would be like this." My good daughter, you really surprised me." "Yes, no matter how lush a tree is, how can it be compared to a grassland? If you want to talk about hope, it would be a boundless grassland filled with vitality." Gu Mengmeng held her forehead. She pointed at the patch of grass that was less than 2 square meters. "So how did this thing come out? What did I do to get this thing?" "You brought hope to others, so you gained energy." The beast deity smiled amiably, looking as if he was saying, "Our children are so promising." Gu Mengmeng could not bear to look at that baffling sense of accomplishment and pride. A person who could only be called brother at most was looking at you like a father looking at his daughter. How King strange. Gu Mengmeng lowered her head and tried her best not to look at the beast deity's face that could never be put together. She thought quietly. The last time he was here, this thing didn't exist. Between the last time and this time, only 2 things had happened. The Mermaid Clan and the Giant Fish Clan had merged to form the New Bridges Clan. Natalie and Peter had reunited. The second matter could only be considered as a private matter. Gu Mengmeng had done countless of such private matters, including Sandy, Colin, Carter and Melinda. If matchmaking others could be considered as bringing hope and accumulating strength, then why would she still be the messenger of the beast deity? She could just be a matchmaker and open a marriage agency. So, the so-called hope was referring to the merger of the two tribes in the sea. Chapter 842. The beast deity was the first to sit on the long bench. He placed his elbow on the armrest and supported his chin with his palm. He tilted his head and asked, "Daughter, do you want to return to your original world?" Gu Mingming's expression froze for a moment before relaxing again. "What's so important about wanting to? I'm not crazy enough to use my own child to open the doors of time and space." The beast deity smiled thoughtfully. "If I tell you that the doors of time and space will appear when the white fog disperses and your grassland of hope is filled with hope, what will you do?" Gu Mingming frowned. Her heart tightened and she pressed her thin lips into a straight line. She looked at the beast deity with a guarded gaze. The beast deity already knew the answer from Gu Mingming's expression. He did not say anything and just patted the seat beside him. "Come, sit down and watch the television." Gu Mingming sat docilely beside the beast deity. Just as he raised his hand to push the white fog away, she grabbed his wrist. "If the doors of time and space open, can I choose not to enter?" The beast deity smiled warmly and benevolently, just like the warm and gentle sunlight at dawn. He placed his large hand lightly on Gu Mingming's little head and said with a fatherly love, "You are the daughter of the beast deity. No one can force you to do what you don't want to do. Even me is the same. After all, there has never been a parent who could win against their own children." Gu Mingming knew that the beast deity would not lie. So if he said so, it must be so. With her heart at ease, Gu Mingming smiled. "If you dare to lie to me, no one will come back to watch teen idol dramas with you in the future." Yeah. The beast deity responded softly. Then he retracted his hand and pushed the fog away. The surroundings fell into a state of silence. Only the screen-like gap in front of them was like a pair of eyes peeking into another world. It displayed scenes that were both familiar and foreign to Gu Mingming. Snake leaned against the side of the office table. His long legs were casually extended and stepped on the ground. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and glanced at the crystal name tag on the office table. "So, Snake." Gu Mingming's eyes widened as she followed Snake's gaze to the crystal nameplate, then looked at Snake, who seemed to be smiling yet not. She was stunned for a moment before giving Snake a 90-degree bow. "Xiao." Snake could not help but burst out laughing. This little guy could always surprise him. Whether it was over there or here, she always surprised him. He never seemed to be able to guess what kind of reaction she would give, and he always liked her more than he imagined. "That's it?" Snakel reached out his finger and knocked on Gu Mingming's work pass, saying, "In your eyes, am I such a perfunctory boss?" No. Gu Mingming shook her head in denial. Snake raised his brows and said, "So you find me difficult to get along with?" Gu Mingming shook her head even harder. No. Snake pinched Gu Mingming's chin lightly and said, "Stop shaking, it's making me dizzy." Gu Mingming was pinched till she could not move and could only reply, "Don't sway, don't sway." Chapter 843. Snake especially enjoyed it, teasing her and watching her flustered and helpless look. The delicate sensation from his fingertips seemed to carry a slight electric current that spread from his fingertips to his entire body. The slight numbness made him feel comfortable all over. "So, what kind of person am I in your eyes?" Gu Mingming stared blankly at Snake, thinking to herself, "If I scold my boss as a pervert on my first day of work, would I be fired?" Snake narrowed his eyes as if he had seen through Gu Mingming's inner thoughts. He added, "If I am not happy, you will be fired on the grounds of not up to the task, and you will have to pay a compensation of 100 times your salary." Gu Mingming's eyes narrowed. "Huh?" Gu Mingming was shocked. Snake smiled evilly and happily. "There are 2 copies of the employment contract. You should have one in your bag, right? Open page 7, paragraph 9, line 4. Take a look." Gu Mingming immediately took off her bag and flipped out the employment contract she had just signed. Following Snake's words, there was indeed such a clause. If you are not up to the task during the contract period, you will have to pay compensation of 100 times your salary for breaching the contract. A monthly salary of 4,500, 100 would be 450,000. Pleasing your boss is your most important task as a personal assistant. Snake reminded her in a very friendly manner. Of course, if he did not emphasize on the word personal, this sentence would seem to be filled with kindness. So, now look at the employment contract in your hands. Reorganize your words and answer me, what kind of person am I in your eyes? Gu Mingming shifted her gaze away from the contract with much difficulty and landed it on Snake's face. Her smile was uglier than crying. In her eyes, Snake was just an IOU with a sum of $450,000. It was a sum that she could not afford to offend, for the sake of work, conscience and whatnot. She could not care less. Boss is the most sacred and inviolable existence in this world. You make me respect you from the bottom of my heart. My respect for you is like a never-ending river, and like the overflowing yellow river that cannot be stopped. Snake poked Gu Mingming's brows, interrupting her exaggerated praise that she learned from television dramas. Aku, senior, darling. Choose one. Gu Mingming tilted her head in a clueless manner. I do not wish for my identity to be exposed in school and attract unnecessary trouble. So you can't call me boss. Snake had a good reason, but actually he just didn't like it when she addressed him like everyone else. He was too intimate. Gu Mingming knew that she and Snake were not that close. She wasn't Taobaw's customer service, so she had to call everyone dear. Then, senior. Gu Mingming smiled as she completed the first mission of this strange job. Snake did not seem too satisfied. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "Why not Aku or my dear?" Gu Mingming smiled awkwardly and said, "Don't we still have to interact in school? It's more natural to call him senior." Snake reluctantly accepted Gu Mingming's explanation and nodded. He then pulled Gu Mingming's wrist and walked out. "Where are we going?" Gu Mingming asked as she jogged behind Snake. Chapter 844. The so-called dormitory was a small villa with 3 floors. It was located between the school and Monsieur. Gu Mingming stood at the entrance of the villa with a dazed expression. "What's wrong?" Snake stood at the entrance and used his body to block the door. With one hand in his pocket, he turned back to look at Gu Mingming, who was not coming in. Gu Mingming snapped out of her trance and said, "I have worked many jobs and stayed in many employee dormitories, but none of them looked like this. I went to primary school, don't lie to me." Snake chuckled. Of course he knew which jobs she had worked and which employee dormitories she had stayed in. He even knew when her roommate, 7th Auntie's cat, had been sterilized. "So?" Snake asked softly. Gu Mingming shook her head and took a step back. "This is definitely not the employee dormitory. I'm not going in." Gu Mingming's guarded look made Snake frown. He did not like her distant look. His tumeng was most suited for a heartless smile. "This is your dormitory. You can only stay here." Snake's voice was slightly cold. Gu Mingming asked, "There are other employees staying here?" Snake took a deep breath and nodded. Gu Mingming was skeptical. She knew that Monsieur was a multinational company and had always treated its employees well. But it should not be so good to the extent that it used a villa as a dormitory for its employees, right? Snake clenched his teeth. Page 7, paragraph 9, line 4. Gu Mingming's head went numb. She rushed in without another word. Evil capitalism. Using money to talk about this again. But what else could she do? She blamed herself for not reading the contract carefully when she signed it. She had been thinking that there was a free lunch falling from the sky. Who knew that it was a trap and a trap? She had sold herself out with her own hands. Who could she blame? She did not even have a place to stay now. Even eating was a problem. Where could she find the $450,000 to compensate Monsieur? Snake's expression was rather helpless. She had obediently given in and listened to him. But it was because of money and not because of him. If this girl really managed to gather enough money one day, would she throw the money away and leave without another word? Wasn't 100 times too little? It should have been 10,000 times, no, it should have been 1,000,000,000 times. However, when he thought about how she stayed by his side because she couldn't pay the penalty fee, why did he feel so awkward? Gu Mingming surveyed the interior design of the villa. This was definitely not a decoration that a dormitory should have. Every detail reeked of extravagance. Gu Mingming even felt that she might not be able to afford the footpad at the entrance with a month's salary. Didn't you say that there are other employees living here? Gu Mingming turned to ask Snake. Snake placed his hand on Gu Mingming's shoulder casually and naturally. He said nonchalantly, I am the CEO of Monsieur. Although I am the boss, I am also one of the employees. As if struck by lightning, Gu Mingming was petrified on the spot. Snake hugged her and walked in while he sat on the sofa. He pulled back his arm and Gu Mingming fell into his arms. This fall brought Gu Mingming back to her senses. She struggled to stand up and said, although I lack money, I reject all immoral transactions. If you insist on using the employment contract to sue me for breach of contract, then go ahead. I'd rather go to jail than sell myself. Chapter 845. Gu Mingming's face flushed red. Everything you are thinking of now is an immoral transaction. Snake nodded with a look of realization. Then, he said thoughtfully, so cooking is an immoral transaction, so you are planning to take the salary of a special assistant without doing any work, right? Cooking? Gu Mingming was stunned. Snake nodded. What else did you think I was going to do? Gu Mingming's face turned even redder. She really wanted to kill herself. Who was he? The great Zhou of Monsieur. Not to mention how many socialites were trying to get close to him. Just based on how popular he was in S University, as long as he was willing to open one of his arms, the class bell, the school bell and the school bell who would pounce on him would break his bones. Why would such a person need to have unspoken rules with her? She was thinking too much. It was quite awkward to think too highly of one's feelings. But Gu Mingming was thick-skinned. She got used to it after being embarrassed for so long. Chuckling, Gu Mingming asked, then what do you want to eat, senior? I will make it for you. Snake used his chin to point at the open kitchen. Anything. Eat whatever you have. I'm not picky. All right. This was good news. Gu Mingming headed straight into the kitchen. She opened up the 3-door fridge one by one. It was filled with everything and they were arranged in an orderly manner. It was the kind of neatness that even an obsessive-compulsive person would find comforting. Gu Mingming took out the ingredients from the fridge and made a simple stir-fried asparagus, scrambled eggs and tomatoes. Then she steamed a mandarin fish. Then she made a bean sprout with soup. 3 dishes and 1 soup. Going to the countryside. After Gu Mingming finished setting the table, she took off her apron and put it away. When she returned to the table, she saw that Snake had already sat down quietly. He did not touch his chopsticks and just looked at her quietly. It was obvious that he was waiting for her to eat together. How long had it been since someone waited for her to eat together? Gu Mingming's heart was touched for some reason. Sitting opposite Snake, Gu Mingming picked up a piece of fish and placed it in his bowl. Senior, try this fish and see if you like it. The corners of Snake's lips curved upwards gently as he said, I like it. Then he sent the fish into his mouth. Gu Mingming clicked her tongue and said, you're just being perfunctory. You like it even before eating? Snake fixed his gaze on Gu Mingming and said gently, I like everything you give me. Gu Mingming choked on her rice and coughed violently. Her face flushed red, not knowing if it was because of her coughing or because she was shy. She waved her hands and said, let's eat, let's not talk while eating. Snake didn't say anything more and just started eating quietly. Not a single piece of leftover food was left. Gu Mingming was washing the dishes in the kitchen while Snake stood at the door and watched. A warmth and happiness that he had never felt before spread from his eyes. Tumeng, so this is how it feels to have you in my life. Even though it's only the first day, I seem to be addicted. Gu Mingming finished washing the dishes and wiped her hands dry. She turned around and was shocked to see Snake standing at the door. She asked, Why are you standing here? Snake held onto Gu Mingming's wrist and led her to the second floor. He pushed open the door to a room and said, "Here, your room." Chapter 846. Snakel chuckled and inched closer to Gu Mingming. His lips stopped at the tip of her nose. "Of course, if you don't like it, you can stay in my room. I don't mind." "I mind," Gu Mingming said and stepped into the room. Then she swung her arm and closed the door. Looking at the door at the tip of his nose, Snakel narrowed his eyes. If he directly asked her to stay with him, she would definitely run away. So he prepared this room for her. But he still preferred the days in the cave. Being able to see her whenever he looked up always made his mood good. Thinking about this, he felt that this door was an eyesore. On the other side of the door, Gu Mingming held her uncontrollable little heart as she squatted on the floor. She took in deep breaths. Was she being seduced? Was she being seduced? Gu Mingming rushed into the washroom and washed her face with cold water to cool down. She patted her face to wake herself up. Although there was no such thing as a match in this era, the gap between the two of them was as big as the Milky Way. In that case, they should not have any strange thoughts from the beginning. After all, it was not easy to be the cowherd and the weaving maid. Sitting back on the bed, Gu Mingming took out the 20-page employment contract from her backpack and started reading it carefully. Only then did she realize that other than the first 3 pages, which were normal rules and regulations, from the 4th page onwards, there were some strange contents. The more Gu Mingming read, the more her head hurt. She felt that she might not have signed an employment contract. This was a contract to sell her body. Gu Mingming felt that even the senior servants in the olden days had more rights than her. Take care of the CEO's 3 meals and daily necessities. Follow the CEO's wishes. Carry out the tasks assigned by the CEO unconditionally and complete them excellently. Not allowed to leave her post under any circumstances. Not allowed to do things that the CEO did not allow. What did it mean to not allow things that the CEO did not allow to happen? Then came the evilist 794, page 7, paragraph 9, line 4. Gu Mingming leaned backwards and threw herself onto the bed with a loud roar. Evil capitalism. Knock, knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Gu Mingming did not need to ask to know who it was. Patting her face, her gaze landed on the humiliating treaty of 794. Taking a deep breath, Gu Mingming opened the door with a smile. "Senior, what's the matter?" Snakel's gloomy mood, which was affected by this broken door, completely dissipated when he saw Gu Mingming's obviously fawning smile. She used to look at him like this, smiling with a hint of flattery but not pretentiousness. Yeah, the feeling of being fawned upon was pretty good. Snake strode straight into Gu Mingming's room, then pushed the door open and entered the washroom. Gu Mingming was dumbfounded as she watched Snake walk into the toilet. She was speechless the entire time. "Don't tell me you're here to borrow the toilet. Is this the only room in this villa with a toilet? Tumeng, come here." Snake stuck half his body out of the washroom. Gu Mingming did not know why Snake wanted to call her Tumeng, but there were only 2 of them here. If Snake could not see some indescribable things, he would definitely call her that. Sweeping her gaze across the scattered contracts on the bed, Gu Mingming smiled brightly at the 450,000. Coming, aside from the topic, today's updates are over. Recently, my QQ reading ratings have dropped quite a bit. My darlings, can you help me leave a message in the comments section and give me a 5-star rating? Please, please. Oh, also a notice, 259 and 274 are the most popular sections. Darlings with a fan value of 800, please enter the verification group as soon as possible to verify your fan value, then transfer to the VIP group to wait for the benefits, group number, 492779273. Then the third thing. I announce today's updates are over. See you tomorrow. Chapter 847. Shave my beard for me. Snake handed the razor to Gu Mingming with a serious expression. Gu Mingming held onto the razor with a conflicted expression. She had never touched such a thing in her entire life, and it looked rather sharp. What if she scratched his face? How much would she have to pay for it? You're not willing? Snake looked down, his gaze cold. Gu Mengmeng could almost feel that he was about to blurt out the 7th page, 9th paragraph, 4th line. No, it's just that senior is too tall, I can't reach it. Gu Mengmeng measured herself. Actually, it was not that she couldn't reach it, it was just that it was a little strenuous. Snake's large hand circled around Gu Mengmeng's waist, then he lifted her up lightly, making her sit on the sink. Snake's muscular waist was wedged between Gu Mengmeng's legs, his upper body leaning forward slightly, inching closer to Gu Mengmeng, saying, "Here, this height is just right." Gu Mengmeng instinctively pushed Snake, saying, Don't, senior, don't come so close to me." Snake chuckled as if he didn't understand Gu Mengmeng's shyness, saying, "If I don't come close, how are you going to shave?" Gu Mengmeng's face was so red that her breathing became uneven. She said softly, "Senior, I really don't know how to use a razor, how about I teach you?" As Snake said, his large hand covered Gu Mengmeng's small hand, holding the razor and moving it around his face. The white bubbles faded away in a rhythmic pattern, revealing a devilishly bewitching face right in front of Gu Mengmeng without any concealment. "Is this your first time shaving a man?" Snake asked despite knowing the answer. Gu Mengmeng blushed and nodded. Snake'll planted a light kiss on her forehead before pulling away in vain. He threw the razor into the basin and washed his face with clean water. Then he pulled Gu Mengmeng's little hand over and poured the toner onto it. Then he looked up at Gu Mengmeng with squinted eyes. Gu Mengmeng's blush deepened. She knew he was asking her to apply toner for him, but why did he look like he was asking for a kiss? Clearing her throat, Gu Mengmeng instinctively pulled her body backwards. Then, she clapped her hands lightly to evenly distribute the toner before applying it on his face. Her movements were gentle and slow. She could feel the warmth of his skin from her palms every time she rubbed it on his face. Gu Mengmeng felt that if she opened her mouth, her heart would jump out from her throat. But Snake'll maintained his smile the entire time. After the toner was applied, he applied essence and face cream. After that, he carried Gu Mengmeng down from the sink and held her hand as they walked out. "Where are we going now?" Gu Mengmeng stumbled behind Snake and asked. Snake chuckled. "I'll bring you to buy some clothes." "No need, I don't lack clothes." Snake stood still and turned around. He gently lifted Gu Mengmeng's chin and looked down at her, saying, "You lack the clothes I bought for you." Gu Mengmeng was stunned. Gu Mengmeng pressed the hand that was not being held onto her chest out of reflex. "Damn it. My young girl's heart." Gu Mengmeng's small actions pleased Snake. He loved every moment when her heart moved for him. Chapter 848. The white fog gradually returned and the empty space that was the size of a home theater was once again covered. Gu Mengmeng stood up from the long bench and stretched lazily. She turned to look at the beast deity and said, "Booking the whole place to go shopping, Snake is really inhumane." The beast deity chuckled and said, "Because he also has your memories in his mind. He knows that you especially like to read those novels with domineering characters, so he recorded down every plot you liked and used the past 18 years to set them up one by one, waiting for you to realize all your dreams one by one after meeting you." Novels with domineering characters? I don't even remember it myself. Gu Mengmeng lowered her head and chuckled. She was indeed a fan of novels in the past and often read all kinds of domineering novels during her free time. But after transmigrating to the beast world, she seemed to have never thought about the content and plot of those novels again. But Snake, who had merged with her memories, remembered every piece of information in her mind that even she herself had forgotten. To him, every second that he waited for her was a long torment. He had to do something related to her to calm his crazy thoughts. Otherwise, there was a high possibility that he would rush into some hospital and kidnap some newborn baby girl. But in that case, he would only get a fake that looked exactly like Gu Mengmeng. A Gu Mengmeng without those memories was not the complete Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mingming did not continue asking about Snake, nor did she mention that Wabi wanted to send him to fight with Snake. She just rolled her eyes and asked another question, stray beasts, do they still have a chance to mate? Wabi's expression changed. The beast deity also stood up and stood beside Gu Mingming, asking, are you referring to Elvis's parents? Gu Mingming nodded and did not deny it. The beast deity's gaze carried a hint of probing as he asked, you already know what they did to Elvis, but aren't you angry? You still want to help them? Gu Mingming shook her head and said, it's not that I'm not angry, it's just that compared to being angry, my heart aches more for my man. Killing one's parents may not be a strange thing in the beast world, but in our world, it's too depraved. I don't want my man to bear such a nightmare. Moreover, Gu Mingming lowered her head and chuckled, Li's parents are already dead, my parents, don't mention them. If possible, I want to give Elvis a complete family. This is selfish, and also true. The beast deity remained silent for a moment before smiling. He rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, do you know? You're so different from Wang Xiaoxin. Gu Mingming had inherited Snake's memories from his father, so she had a certain level of understanding of Wang Xiaoxin's way of doing things. She was a stickler for iron-fisted policies, and she was very clear about rewards and punishments. He strongly advocated a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Repaying evil with good, how to repay good. Gu Mingming could not say that Wang Xiaoxin's way of doing things was wrong, but everyone had their own way of living and their own obsession. Wang Xiaoxin desperately wanted to go back, but perhaps her obsession was with family. Gu Mingming smiled and said, we are originally different. Everyone in this world is unique, isn't that so? Chapter 849. The beast deity leaned close to Gu Mingming's ear and whispered the method to her. Gu Mingming nodded and turned to leave without saying a word. The beast deity stood behind her with a smile until she disappeared into the thick fog. He then said calmly, next time, remember to come back and watch television with me. Gu Mingming opened her eyes and was in a daze for a moment. She calmed herself down and realized that she had returned to her home in Saint Nazaire. Elvis and Leah were not around and the one guarding her was actually Wabi. This was very strange. With those two fellows' temperaments, how could they allow a single male to be alone with her? Frowning, Gu Mingming asked, what happened? Wabi looked away and instinctively avoided Gu Mingming's gaze. Nothing. Gu Mingming chuckled. My mental age is more than 200 years older than yours. You are still too young to lie to me. Wabi simply raised his head. There are some things but I am not in the mood to tell you. Wait for your male to come back and ask him yourself. Gu Mingming was suddenly choked speechless. That's right, Wabi took good care of her. But she also knew that it was all because of Snake. Could the two of them even be considered friends? Wabi was neither Elvis nor Leah. He was not even anyone in the Saint Nazaire tribe. He indeed had no obligation to obey her. Perhaps it was because she had been the messenger of the beast deity for too long that she had gotten used to the feeling that everyone should listen to her? Gu Mingming suddenly realized that she had been tainted with the most despicable habit when she first came to the beast world. She lowered her eyes in deep thought. Wabi saw her like this but could not bring himself to be stubborn. He sat by the bed and said, Hey, are you serious? So petty? You are like this just because I rebutted you? Gu Mingming shook her head with a smile. No, I just realized that I can't be a white lotus and am a little depressed. Wabi frowned in confusion. Gu Mingming said, a white lotus that emerges from the mud without being tainted is one. But I rolled in the mud and am now covered in mud. Forget it, since I can't be a white lotus, I will pretend to be a lotus root. What nonsense are you talking about? Wabi snorted disdainfully, then shook his head in slight disdain. He did not continue the topic and only pretended to be nonchalant as he asked, Did you ask about sending me to see Snake? Gu Mingming thought about it. She did ask, but the beast deity refused to answer. If she couldn't do it, the beast deity would probably tell her that she couldn't. Therefore, he should be able to do it, but he needed some sort of opportunity. Since the time wasn't right, he couldn't reveal it, right? Gu Mingming took a deep breath and looked at Wabiai's face. She nodded seriously. I did, but when will you send me to see him? Wabiai's eyes lit up. All the lethargy from the past few days had been swept away, and he was filled with excitement as though he had been injected with chicken blood. This made his earlier nonchalance look rather comical, but Gu Mingming had no intention of making fun of him. After all, how deep and urgent was her yearning for someone she had been with for more than 800 years? Shaking his head, he said, I can't reveal the secrets of the heavens, but there are always fortuitous encounters. Speak human language. Wabiai roared. Gu Mingming was taken aback by his roar. It seemed like no one had ever shouted at her like this ever since she transmigrated, not even the previous snake. Chapter 850. He didn't love her and would never love her. He had no ulterior motives towards her, but Snake was the key that linked them together. No matter who it was, the fact that Wabiai had gone through fire and water for her would never change, right? Wabiai's hair stood on end from Gu Mingming's stare. He slapped her head and frowned. What are you laughing at? Gu Mingming shrugged. I am laughing at you. So you are a fart? Wabiai was choked by Gu Mingming. He rolled his eyes. I really don't understand why he would like you. His taste is really problematic. Gu Mingming lifted her chin. Your old partner is Ellie. I don't think your taste is any better than Snake's. Wabiai snorted in disdain. What partner? She is just a tool for me to level up. She has some use for me. I don't like her and it doesn't prove my taste. Gu Mingming gave him a I don't believe you expression. Then tell me, what kind of females do you like? I will help you pimp one another day. Wabiai snorted. What do I like? Females are all troublesome. Don't do unnecessary things and hinder me from improving my skills. Gu Mingming laughed out loud. So you really like Snake? Wabiai was first taken aback. Then he roared in anger. I treat you as a friend, but you treat me as a pervert? Gu Mingming said with a serious face. You are not right to say that. You are discriminating. Everyone has the right to choose their own partner. Some people just happen to like someone of the same gender. How is that a pervert? Wabiai was taken aback by Gu Mingming's words. He was naturally no match for Gu Mingming in terms of eloquence. After a long while, he still couldn't come up with a proper reply. In the end, he just harumphed loudly. It seemed like he was really angry. Gu Mingming didn't continue to tease him. She just patted his shoulder. I really asked my father about sending you to meet him, but he didn't reply to me. It was obvious he wasn't willing to tell me. But don't worry, I will remember this. In the future, I will help you ask my father every time I go back. Maybe one day he'll be annoyed by my questions and tell me. Only then did Wabiai's expression lighten. He cleared his throat and said, If you annoy him, will there be trouble? Gu Mingming shrugged. Who knows? I don't know him that well, but I've never seen him lose his temper before. But at least he won't kill me. After all, he still wants me to watch TV with him. Wabiai nodded and said, I will remember this favor. Whether or not it succeeds, I will thank you. Gu Mingming placed a hand on Wabiai's shoulder and smiled. We are brothers, there's no need to thank me. Gu Mingming was now clear about her relationship with Wabiai and felt more comfortable interacting with him. But Wabiai was clearly not used to Gu Mingming's sudden change in style. He shifted his shoulders unnaturally and frowned when he saw that he couldn't shake off Gu Mingming's hand. Can you not touch me when you are talking? Seeing that Wabiai was about to dodge, Gu Mingming became even more playful. She grinned. What's wrong with a hug? You even hugged me at the bottom of the sea. What did I say? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.